Chapter 1225. Xianying City, east of the city. In front of a newly built mansion, there were many people who had come to visit. Among these people, there were ordinary citizens of Xianying City, experts of aristocratic families, officials of the imperial court with disdain on their faces, and generals of the frontier who exuded a strong, murderous aura. The reason why the newly built mansion attracted so many visitors was because the owner of the mansion had a powerful background. He is indeed the emperor's most valued son-in-law. Not only does he not need to live in the elegant district, which is full of rules, but he even built such a magnificent mansion in the eastern district, where the important officials of the court live. An official from the Ministry of Personnel commented in a sour tone as he looked at the brand-new mansion that exuded an oppressive aura of riches. "I'm afraid this is the only one in the history of Emperor Qin's kingdom." After hearing the sour evaluation of the official from the Ministry of Personnel, some of the people present revealed looks of envy and jealousy. Some of them revealed joyful smiles. Some of them revealed gloomy hatred. And some of them were expressionless. No one knew what they were thinking. What's the big deal about building a separate mansion? Just as the crowd was feeling complicated by the sour comment of the official from the Ministry of Personnel, an official from the Ministry of Rights said with a sinister smile, "According to the imperial edict just issued by His Majesty, the 35 prince consorts living in the Anya district will all have their titles removed after being given new titles." "Lord Wang, what do you mean by that?" A middle-aged man with a strong, murderous aura, obviously from a border general, asked. "It's simple," Lord Wang from the Ministry of Rights said with a hint of mockery. "From now on, there will only be one son-in-law in Emperor Qin's kingdom, and that is Yu Haoran, who is marrying Princess Ling Fei in 2 days. This, after hearing Lord Wang's explanation, more than half of the people present sucked in a breath of cold air from the shock of this news. This order from Emperor Qin was too shocking, and it could easily attract the dissatisfaction of some aristocratic families and cause chaos in Emperor Qin's kingdom. Above the mansion, looking at the connected courtyards, artificial mountains and ponds, a corridor every 5 li, a pavilion every 10 li, a cornice at the corners of the corridors, 100 fine willows, and blue waves and clear water, the mansion occupied an area of more than 2,000 mu. Yu Haoran, who was floating in the air above the mansion, nodded in satisfaction. "Steward Jiang, please thank His Majesty on my behalf when you return," he instructed Steward Jiang, who was standing behind him. "This old servant obeys." Chief Steward Jiang replied. "Brother Ran." Yu Haoran signaled Steward Jiang not to follow him for the time being. Then, he rose another 30 meters into the air and summoned Victor's second doppelganger, who was cultivating in seclusion. "Not bad." His clone nodded in satisfaction as he looked down at the manor below through his consciousness. "It seems that the group of people who built the mansion built it according to the blueprints I made. There is not a trace of disclosure. Brother Ran, will the formation you plan to set up conflict with the spirit-locking formation in Xianying City?" Yu Haoran asked worriedly in response to his second doppelganger's praise for the mansion. "Yu Haoran, don't worry." Thaling, who had successfully made the magic artifact for Qin Ling Fei, took the initiative to explain to his second doppelganger as he left Victor. "The spirit-gathering formation that my second doppelganger plans to set up mainly relies on extracting the spirit qi from the spirit veins. It will not conflict with the spirit-locking formation in Xianying City." Looking at Thaling, who was standing side by side with his second doppelganger, Yu Haoran could not help but ask in surprise, "Thaling, are you planning to do it yourself?" "That's right." The pagoda spirit nodded as it looked at the mansion below through the sea of consciousness. There was a hint of anticipation in its eyes. "Yu Haoran, according to the cultivation and training plans we made some time ago, I'm afraid that your original plan to establish a sect and establish your own team will not be realized for a very long time. Since you don't need to establish a sect and establish your own team, then you don't need to choose some remote mountain or forest to build a residence and a blessed land for cultivation." Thaling glanced at his second doppelganger and then looked at Yu Haoran outside his sea of consciousness. "Yu Haoran, The mansion below is the place where you are about to complete the most important experience of your life. Why don't you make this mansion your permanent blessed land? All right. After hearing Thaling's proposal, Yuharan thought about it for a while and felt that what he said was very reasonable. Therefore, he nodded in agreement and directly expressed his attitude. Thaling, all the spiritual veins in the first floor of the Thief Sect's treasure house are stored in the Victor. How you want to renovate the mansion and how many spiritual veins you want to use is entirely up to you. All right. Thaling nodded and turned to instruct his second doppelganger. You come and assist me. Old Thaling, don't worry, I know what to do. The second doppelganger nodded and directly returned to the Victor. After the second doppelganger returned to the Victor, Thaling instructed Yuharan. Yuharan, next I will use the possession technique and then use my consciousness to control your physical body and personally renovate this mansion. I got it. Yuharan nodded and said. After the possession technique was completed and his consciousness took control of his physical body, Thaling returned to Steward Zhang's side and ordered in an indifferent voice. Retreat 1,000 meters from a mansion. Yes, old servant. Although Steward Zhang was a little confused about the change in Prince Consort's aura and attitude, he followed his duty and immediately retreated 1,000 meters after receiving the order respectfully. After taking a deep breath, Thaling instructed his second doppelganger in the Victor. Take out the 4 formation flags of the blue dragon, white tiger, vermilion bird, and black tortoise. After hearing Thaling's order, the second doppelganger immediately sent out the 4 symbols formation flags that were refined with the help of the 4 symbols sex defensive formation. Change. Looking at the 4 formation flags floating in the air, Thaling raised his arm and pointed at the formation flags. 4 special energies instantly merged into the 4 formation flags. Then he roared. Roar. With a dragon roar, the blue dragon formation flag immediately transformed into a 1,000-meter-long green divine dragon. Woo! With a tiger roar, the white tiger formation flag immediately transformed into a 100-meter-tall white divine tiger. Clang! With a cry, the vermilion bird formation flag immediately transformed into a 100-meter-tall vermilion bird. Whoosh! With a roar, the black tortoise formation flag immediately transformed into a 1,000-meter-tall divine beast, black tortoise. Merge! After the 4 formation flags had all transformed into divine beasts, Thaling raised his arm and pointed at the mansion and shouted softly. With Thaling's shout, the 1,000-meter-tall black tortoise that landed in the mansion first merged into the ground. Then, the most powerful blue dragon automatically disintegrated into thousands of 10-meter-long blue dragons and merged into the walls and courtyard. Then, the most murderous white tiger directly solidified into a 100-meter-tall statue and stood in the middle of the mansion square. Chapter 1226. Xianyang City, in front of the prince's mansion. After hearing the news from the officials of the Ministry of Rights, a cabinet elder, who had been living in seclusion for many years and ignored the political affairs of the court, could not control his grief and indignation. He pointed at the prince's mansion and shouted loudly, "It is intolerable for officials to rebel against the emperor. This is a sign that the country is about to be destroyed." Hearing the cabinet elder's cry of grief and indignation, everyone present could not help but change their expressions. A playful smile appeared in the eyes of some experts of the aristocratic families. The general of the border, who exuded a strong, murderous aura, looked coldly at the cabinet elder, who dared to slander the emperor's son-in-law. Some of the great Confucian scholars, who had been lucky enough to avoid the burning of books and burying of Confucians last year, quickly walked to the cabinet elder's side, as if they were determined to defend the laws of the court. Some of the high-ranking officials of the court looked at the general, who was exuding a strong, murderous aura, and the gathering of more and more Confucian scholars with grave expressions in their eyes. Lord Hong, you are a world-renowned great Confucian scholar and the newly appointed Assistant Minister of the Ministry of Rights. In the face of such rebellious officials who have caused chaos in the court and caused the crisis of the country's destruction, Don't you dare to speak up for justice and risk your life to remonstrate." Seeing that most of the people gathered around him were retired officials who had been living in seclusion with him for many years, while the high-ranking officials and officials of the court stayed out of the matter, the cabinet elder felt a chill in his heart, and at the same time, a flame of anger rose in his heart. Walking quickly to the assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights, the cabinet elder pointed at Hong Dongya's nose and questioned him loudly. Faced with the cabinet elder's question, Hong Dongya's face was gloomy and he did not know how to reply. As the newly appointed assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights and a great Confucian scholar who defended the ethics of the court, Hong Dongya naturally did not agree to abolishing the honorific titles of the 35 emperor's son-in-law and highlighting Yu Haoran's nobility. However, the burning of books and burying of Confucians last year was caused by the son of the previous assistant minister of the Ministry of Rights' sneak attack on Yu Haoran at the city gate. For the sake of himself and the lives of the hundreds of people in the Hong family, he would never rashly stand up. However, the pavilion elder in front of him and the other Confucian scholars also had the ability to decide his future, so he couldn't reject them. Just when Hong Dongya was in a dilemma and didn't know how to get out of this predicament, a loud shout suddenly came from above the prince's mansion. Everyone who was attracted by the shout immediately raised their heads to look. When they heard the deafening roars of 4 beasts and saw the blue dragon, the white tiger, the vermilion bird, and the black tortoise hovering above the mansion, they were completely stunned. On the other hand, the generals who gave off dense killing intent all knelt on one knee and bowed respectfully. Greetings to the great general. Congratulations to the great general for the protection of the divine beast. After hearing the shouts from the generals at the border, the experts from the aristocratic families looked at each other and immediately rose into the air to observe. However, just as they were about to enter the mansion, they heard a chilling threat. The area within a kilometer of the prince's mansion is a restricted area. Anyone who trespasses will die. After hearing Yu Haoran's cold threat, most of the experts from the aristocratic families obediently retreated a kilometer. However, there were 3 martial sages who had just been promoted to aristocratic families and obtained the right to live in Xianyang City who entered the restricted area without fear. Then, accompanied by Dragon's Cry, Tiger's Roar, and Bird's Cry, a 1,000-meter-long blue dragon, a 100-meter-long white tiger, and a 100-meter-long vermilion bird instantly appeared in front of the 3 martial sages. With a simple tail swing, pounce, and burn, the 3 martial sages were completely destroyed, and their bodies fell in front of the gate of the mansion. The great general is mighty. The great general is mighty. The great general is mighty. The simple and crude method immediately attracted the passionate admiration of the generals of the border. At the same time, it angered the great scholars who were benevolent, righteous, and virtuous. Yu Haoran, as the emperor's son-in-law, you should abide by the laws of the Emperor Qin's kingdom. How can you kill an important official of the imperial court on the street? This is a serious crime that can lead to the extermination of 9 generations of your family. The cabinet elder who had taken 3 steps forward raised his head and rebuked angrily. If Yu Haoran was the one controlling the body, he would definitely retaliate with even sharper words in the face of the cabinet elder's angry rebuke. However, the one controlling the body was Thaling, an expert who had lived for countless years and had long ignored all living things. Therefore, in the face of the cabinet elder's angry rebuke, he didn't even look at it, let alone pay attention to it. In the eyes of the cabinet elder, Yu Haoran's blatant disregard was contempt for the imperial court and a humiliation to the path of Confucianism. This made him roar with even more grief and indignation. Yu Haoran, this old man will immediately sound the bell of misfortune and use blood to remonstrate. You traitor, and traitor will be brought to justice. After roaring, the cabinet elder immediately turned and left the mansion. He strode toward the imperial palace and the bell of misfortune, which had been passed down for 10,000 years and symbolized the laws of the great Qin kingdom. At the same time, The 100 or so great scholars who had gathered immediately quickened their steps and followed. They also planned to use their hot blood to awaken Emperor Qin's ignorant mind and bring clarity to the great Emperor Qin's kingdom. Oh no, something big is going to happen. Seeing the cabinet elder and the others quickly leave the mansion, Hong Dongya's expression suddenly changed, and he muttered to himself. Last year's book burning and Confucian burying seemed to have killed 100,000 Confucian scholars. But in truth, the Confucian scholars who had been killed were just ordinary scholars with no illustrious reputation or background. The cabinet elder and the others who planned to sound the bell of misfortune not only had great influence throughout the world, but also had a complicated network of interest behind them. Regardless of whether the final result of the blood remonstrance was Yu Haoran being crippled or the cabinet elder and the others dying tragically, it would be an enormous loss to the great Emperor Qin's kingdom. Thinking of this, Hong Dongya looked up at Yu Haoran in the air and saw that he was completely ignoring the cabinet elder and the others who had gone to sound the bell of misfortune. Helpless, he immediately walked up to the general who was still kneeling on one knee and explained the stakes of the entire matter. Finally, he implored with an anxious expression, "General Lin, it is said that you are very close to the emperor's son-in-law and that he will listen to some of your suggestions. Therefore, this official hopes that you can persuade the emperor's son-in-law to reject His Majesty's imperial edict to honor only the emperor's son-in-law and have him apologize to the cabinet elder and the others." Hearing Hong Dongya's suggestion, Lin Yuanxiang stood up and questioned in a frosty voice, "Lord Hong, are you trying to make an enemy out of the emperor's son-in-law?" "General Lin, this official doesn't understand what you mean." Hong Dongya didn't understand why he would make an enemy out of Yu Haoran by making him take a step back instead of directly condemning him. "Lord Hong, everyone in the great Emperor Qin's kingdom knows that ever since the emperor's son-in-law made his debut, no matter what difficulties or dangers he faced, he has never taken a step back, let alone taken the initiative to apologize." Lin Yuanxiang proudly replied to Hong Dongya's question. Moreover, issuing the imperial edict to honor only the emperor's son-in-law is a favor from His Majesty to the emperor's son-in-law. Why would he refuse? Speaking of this, Lin Yunxiang looked up at the backs of the cabinet elder and the others and threatened them with a fierce, murderous aura. As for those reckless Confucians, as long as His Majesty and the emperor's son-in-law give the order, our hundreds of thousands of troops on the left will immediately march south and completely trample on those pedantic Confucians who talk about righteousness and morality, but secretly scheme against each other. Hong Dongya widened his eyes and looked at Lin Yuanxiang in disbelief. Ignoring Hong Dongya's shocked expression, Lin Yuanxiang reminded him with a sinister smile. Chapter 1227. Xianyang City, the sky above the prince's mansion. Faling, who was controlling Yu Haoran's body, nodded his head in satisfaction as he watched the mythological beast transform from the four symbols formation flags completely merge into the mansion. Subsequently, he continued to instruct the second avatar inside the victor. 5 elements, 5 ultimate formation flags. After hearing Thaling's instruction, the second avatar immediately sent out 5 formation flags of white, cyan, black, red, and yellow colors. Looking at the 5 formation flags floating in the air, Thaling took a deep breath and quickly formed a seal with his 10 fingers. Gold Master Kill. Accompanied by Thaling's soft shout, the white seals formed by his 10 fingers quickly merged into the white formation flags. Subsequently, the white flag formation directly landed in the front yard of the mansion. Wood Master Life. The cyan seals formed by his 10 fingers quickly merged into the cyan formation flags. The cyan formation flags landed in the backyard of the mansion. Water Master Trap. The black seals formed by his 10 fingers quickly merged into the black formation flags. The black formation flags landed on the head of the white tiger statue. Fire Master Extinguish. The red seals formed by his 10 fingers quickly merged into the red formation flags. The red formation flags quickly rose into the air and quietly floated in the air. Earth Master Defense. The yellow seals formed by his 10 fingers quickly merged into the yellow formation flags. The yellow formation flags immediately expanded and quickly enveloped the entire sky above the mansion. 5 elements reinforce and restrain each other, fuse. After the 5 elements formation flags were in place, Thowling suddenly clapped his palms together. The mansion below was immediately enveloped by 5 different colored energies. Following the continuous explosion and fusion of the 5 colored energies, they finally transformed into strands of milky white energy, causing the entire mansion to present a hint of fairyland. Prince Yifeng, this old man, has personally set up the 5 ultimate formation of the 5 elements nearly 30 times. However, whether it is the power of the formation or the changes in the colors of the energy, they are far inferior to the formation personally set up by Prince Consort. In the air above the mansion, the Li family's ancestor, Li Ziho, asked with a frown, could it be that the 5 elements and 5 extremes formation can be upgraded to a higher level? Old Marshal Li, actually, the 5 elements 5 ultimate formation that Prince Consort Ma just set up is no different from the formations that you and I are familiar with. The method and process of setting it up are also exactly the same. Facing Li Ziho's doubts, Prince Yifeng explained with a solemn expression. The only difference is the 5 formation flags used to set up the 5 elements and 5 absolutes formation. Array flag. After hearing Prince Yifeng's explanation, Li Ziho carefully recalled the 5 array flags that Yu Haoran had just taken out. He didn't find anything special about the 5 array flags. Therefore, he could only look at Prince Yifeng expectantly, hoping that he could give a more detailed explanation. Old Marshal Li, the 5 formation flags that Prince Consort just took out contain a trace of the origin energy of the 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, and earth. The fusion of the 5 elemental origin powers will form a destructive power that can destroy the world. Facing Li Ziho's expectant gaze, Prince Yifeng lowered his head and looked at Yu Haoran, who was quietly standing in the air. A bitter smile appeared in his eyes as he continued to explain. And in order to refine a formation flag that contains a trace of the original destructive power, one's cultivation and formation must break through to the Emperor Realm. In other words, the current Prince Consort is already an Emperor Realm expert in formation. Sizzle. Hearing Prince Yifeng's final evaluation of Yu Haoran's formation cultivation, not only did Li Ziho, who was proficient in formations, suck in a breath of cold air, even the other quasi-martial Saint Realm experts couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This was because this conclusion was too shocking and sudden for them. Prince Yifeng, are you really sure that Prince Consort's formation cultivation has already broken through to the Emperor Realm and became the first array emperor in the profound sky continent? After the shock, Li Ziho asked, unable to accept it. After all, not only was Yu Haoran too young, he had also dabbled in too many auxiliary cultivation systems. He simply didn't have enough time to study the Tao of arrays. Under such circumstances, his formation cultivation was able to easily break through to the Emperor Realm. No one would be able to believe or accept this. Furthermore, for Li Ziho, who had always been infatuated with the Tao of arrays and yearned to advance to a higher realm, this was a great test of his Tao heart. If he could survive this test, then he would definitely be able to break through the bottleneck that had troubled him for decades and advance his formation cultivation to the Grandmaster realm. If he was unable to survive this test, then the loss of his Tao heart might cause him to go berserk and cause a backlash from his inner demons. Therefore, in the face of Li Ziho's questioning, Prince Yifeng took a deep breath and began to narrate his own experience. He hoped that, through his own experience, he would be able to help him survive the test of his Tao heart. Old Marshal Li, 13 years ago, when this king was training outside, he had unintentionally entered the cave abode left behind by a great grandmaster of the Tao of arrays. Looking in the direction of the central region, Prince Yifeng's eyes revealed a look of reminiscence as he spoke. At the core of the formation in that cave abode, there were 3 jade slips. One of the jade slips recorded the lifetime of the great grandmaster of the Tao of arrays. The second jade slip recorded the great Grand Master of the Tao of Array's speculations and conjectures on how to reach the Emperor realm. The last jade slip recorded in detail the different formation realms and the power of the formation that could be displayed when refining the 5 elements and 5 extremes formation flags. Prince Yifeng, I wonder if this old man can take a look at that jade slip. After hearing Prince Yifeng mention his fortuitous encounter, although he knew that it would be rude to ask for it, his love for formations and the test of his Tao heart made him unable to help but ask. Nodding, Prince Yifeng took out a slightly simple jade slip from his storage ring and handed it to Li Ziho rather reluctantly. After quickly receiving the jade slip, Li Ziho's consciousness immediately entered the jade slip. Only 30 seconds later, a trace of a special energy fluctuation slowly emanated from Li Ziho's body. Great! Feeling the special energy fluctuation emanating from Li Ziho's body, Prince Yifeng couldn't help but cry out in joy. He said to Meng Zhengkai and the others who were filled with doubt, with the help of the information recorded in the jade slip, Old Marshal Li has successfully passed the test of his Tao heart and has successfully advanced to the Grand Master realm in the Tao of Arrays. After hearing Prince Yifeng's explanation of Li Ziho's change, Meng Zhengkai and the other quasi-martial saints revealed happy smiles on their faces. Chapter 1228. Xianyang City, in a void above the prince's mansion. Looking at Yu Haoran, who was floating above the mansion and quietly feeling the milky white energy formed by the 5 elements 5 ultimate formation, Emperor Qin tried to control the shock in his heart and asked in a calm tone, Senior Teng, Senior Zhou, is it true that the prince consort has broken through the realm of formation emperor, as Prince Yifeng said just now? Yes. Looking at each other, in the end, the ancestor Yuan, who was closer to him, nodded and confirmed. Your Majesty, the prince consort used the 5 elements 5 ultimate formation set up by the 5 elements formation flag. The milky white energy formed by the final fusion contains a destructive power that can seriously injure Wu Zun and the Emperor Wu. Only those who have reached the martial emperor realm in terms of formations can do this. After receiving further confirmation from the ancestor Yuan, Emperor Qin could no longer suppress the shock in his heart. He shook his head and sighed with a bitter smile. The prince consort is a monster. In this regard, the ancestor Yuan and Zhou Fengshu nodded in agreement. However, compared to the size of Emperor Qin and the ancestor Yuan, Zhou Fengshu was more thoughtful. After all, the Zhou family had been secretly accumulating strength. The purpose was to awaken the sleeping ancestors and then lead the Zhou family to restore the glory of the Middle Ages. But whether it was awakening the ancestors who had been sleeping for countless years or conquering the world like the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, alchemy and formation were indispensable and important means. And Yu Haoran's stunning performance in Alchemy Tao and Array Tao made Zhou Fengshu want to recruit and rope him in even more. At this time, he was worried that his great-granddaughter Zhou Yiqian was not good enough to attract the attention of Yu Haoran. At this moment, he was considering whether to use special means to inform the patriarch and let him send out the real trump card of the Zhou family. Boom! Just as everyone at the scene looked at Yu Haoran, who was floating in the air and continuing to set up more profound formations, the entire Xianyang city suddenly rang with a low and oppressive bell sound. This is the sound of the bell of grievance. The Yin family ancestor, who had once been in charge of revising the laws of the Great Qin dynasty, cried out involuntarily when he heard the low and oppressive sound of the bell. Who rang the bell of grievance? Ever since the founding ancestor of the Great Qin Empire created the bell of grievance, it had rung 3 times. The most recent rung was 999 years ago. Every time the bell rang, it meant that Emperor Qin was about to face a moment of life and death. Therefore, after hearing the Yin family ancestors' involuntary cry, Emperor Qin's face immediately darkened as he shouted, Your Majesty, it was Xiao Zhong, the former Grand Secretary of the Imperial Cabinet, who had retired for 13 years, who rang the bell. Meng Zhengkai quickly scanned the imperial palace with his divine sense and hurried forward to report. What kind of injustice did Elder Xiao suffer that she actually had to use the method of ringing the bell to seek redress? After hearing that the person who rang the bell was Elder Xiao, Emperor Qin secretly let out a sigh of relief. However, his tone of questioning had to be cautious. Elder Xiao's identity was too special, and the person behind her was too powerful. Her every action had a huge impact on the Emperor Qin Empire. They had been alarmed by the strange phenomenon caused by Yu Haoran setting up the formation and had gathered in the void above the prince's mansion. As for the conflict that had just occurred in front of the mansion, the dozen quasi-martial saint experts had not paid any attention to it. Therefore, when faced with Emperor Qin's questioning, everyone looked at each other and realized that no one knew why Elder Xiao had rung the bell. Your Majesty, please allow this old subject to investigate this matter. As the previous Prime Minister, Elder Xiao's colleague and former friend, the Yin family ancestor took the initiative to ask for instructions. Then I'll have to trouble you, Prime Minister Yin, Emperor Qin said politely. In fact, whether it was Elder Xiao's redress of injustice or the ringing of the bell, as the ruler of a country, Emperor Qin had to deal with it immediately. However, as Yu Haoran, who was floating above the mansion, took out 9 formation flags of different colors, as well as the sudden changes in the faces of Prince Yifeng, Zhou Fengxiu, and Ancestor Yuan, he had no mood to deal with Elder Xiao's ringing of the bell. Feeling the power of the 5 elements and 5 unique formations after the fusion, Thaling also nodded with satisfaction, and then continued to instruct the second clone. Second clone, take the 9-9 to 1 formation flags. Yes, Elder Thaling. Nodding with a solemn expression, the second clone carefully sent out 9 formation flags of different colors. Thaling, although my cultivation of formations is not as high as yours and the second clone's, I, who specialized in formations in my previous life, also know that the 9-9 to 1 formation is a forbidden formation. Hearing the name of the formation mentioned by Thaling when instructing the second clone, and seeing the 9-9 color formation flags sent out by the second clone, Yu Haoran, who had abided by the prior agreement and allowed him to transform the prince's mansion at will, couldn't help but question. I want to know now, what are you going to do? Yu Haoran, the 9-9 to 1 formation that is listed as a forbidden formation is fundamentally different from the 9-9 to 1 formation that I, Thaling, arranged. While replying to Yu Haoran's question, Thaling mobilized his divine thought to control the 9 formation flags of different colors, and then inserted them in different corners of the mansion. Because the 9-9 to 1 formation that I, Thaling, arranged is a god-level formation that extracts the spiritual chi from 9 spiritual veins, and then gathers the power of the stars above the 9 heavens. It can truly create a grotto heaven wonderland, and it can also condense a starry mythical beast. As his explanation fell, Thaling rapidly rose several thousand meters into the air and was less than 100 meters away from Emperor Qin and the others. However, he completely ignored Emperor Qin and the others above him. While his 10 fingers quickly formed a seal, he shouted at the 9 formation flags in the mansion. Merge! Along with the shout, the 9 formation flags that had merged with the seal began to forcibly absorb the milky white energy formed by the 5 elements and 5 ultimate formations. After forcibly absorbing the milky white energy, the 9 formation flags began to expand continuously and soon became giant flags that were about 100 meters tall. Second clone, 9 types of blood essences of exotic beasts that contain the bloodlines of mythical beasts. When the 9 formation flags had expanded to a height of 100 meters, Thaling increased the speed of forming seals with his 10 fingers while instructing the second clone Invictor. Using his origin energy to wrap the 9 drops of blood essences of exotic beasts that contain the bloodlines of mythical beasts, the second clone left Victor and floated in the sea of consciousness. After that, he began to form the same seal as Thaling. However, the difference was that the seal formed by Thaling was integrated into the formation flags, while the seal formed by the second clone was integrated into the blood essences of exotic beasts. Chapter 1229. In the void above the prince's mansion in Xianyang City. Condense. When the 9 drops of blood essence in Yu Haoran's sea of consciousness had completely disappeared under the effect of a seal formed by the second doppelganger, Thaling, who had stopped making seals, pointed at the 9 formation flags and continued to roar. Following Thaling's roar, the 9 drops of blood essence that had disappeared in the sea of consciousness suddenly appeared above the 9 formation flags and quickly merged with them. Roar! The 9 formation flags that had merged with the 9 drops of blood essence suddenly started to twist faster. When the formation flags were twisted to such an extent that they broke, the flags gradually condensed into the evil demons that had run rampant in ancient times for a long time and were later exterminated by the 9 divine beast kings. The 9 ancient evil demons that were over 100 meters tall clenched their fists and beat their chests. Then, they raised their heads to the sky and let out a deafening roar. The deafening roar immediately alarmed everyone in Xianyang City. Experts whose cultivation had reached the martial arts grandmaster realm and above soared into the air and flew towards the prince's mansion. Warriors whose cultivation had not reached the martial arts grandmaster realm used their body movement techniques and also sped up towards the prince's mansion. As for the ordinary people in the city, they hid in their homes, trembling all over. Soon, the number of people gathered outside the prince's mansion exceeded 10,000. When the 9 formation flags had all condensed into ancient evil demons, Thaling took a deep breath and then extracted a part of the energy of the original victor and directly merged it into the bodies of the 9 ancient evil demons. The ancient evil demons that had merged with the energy of the victor not only looked more ferocious and terrifying, but they also quickly reached a height of 1,000 meters. Rise! Thaling crossed his fingers and suddenly stepped into the void with his left foot as he continued to roar. Following Thaling's roar, the 9 ancient evil demons that were over 1,000 meters tall strode out of the mansion and stood around it. Then, the 9 evil demons each inserted their huge palms into the ground around the mansion and lifted it up together. The mansion, which occupied an area of nearly 1,000 acres, was lifted off the ground by the full strength of 9 demons who were over 1,000 meters tall. Then it quickly rose into the air. This is the 9-9-1 formation that was listed as a taboo. It's a completely new formation. Prince Yifeng's face revealed an expression of disbelief as he watched the 9,000-meter-tall demons condensed by the 9 formation flags lifting the mansion with all their might. Zhou Fengshu and Yuan Zhu looked at each other and found the horror in each other's eyes. Senior Tung, Senior Zhou, what kind of formation did Prince Consort set up? As the Emperor of the Empire, although Emperor Qin was not proficient in the art of array formations, he still had a certain understanding of some well-known array formations. Therefore, like Prince Yifeng, he also recognized that the formation that Yu Haoran had just set up was not the 9-9-1 formation that was listed as a taboo. This also made him secretly heave a sigh of relief. However, after seeing that the formation flags could condense 9 ancient evil demons whose strength had reached the 3rd tribulation quasi-martial saint realm, Emperor Qin was filled with curiosity about the formation that Yu Haoran was setting up. He couldn't help but ask Yuan Zhu and Zhou Fengshu for confirmation. Yuan Zhu nodded at Zhou Fengshu, and then Zhou Fengshu took the initiative to explain. Your Majesty, the formation that Prince Consort is setting up, I have never heard of it before. I am unable to give the exact origin of the formation. But then, Zhou Fengshu took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed the shock that had just emerged in his heart. He speculated with a solemn expression. Your Majesty, although I am unable to recognize the specific origin of the formation, I can tell you with certainty through the detailed records of the different levels of formation power in the Zhou family's scripture pavilion. At this point, Zhou Fengshu's gaze turned to the 9 ancient demon gods and said word by word, the formation that Prince Consort is setting up has reached the divine level. Senior Zhou, what did you just say? Suddenly turning his head, Emperor Qin stared at Zhou Fengshu with wide eyes and asked in a trembling voice, Your Majesty, I just said that the formation that Prince Consort is setting up has reached the legendary divine level. Zhou Fengxiu could understand Emperor Qin's incredulous mood, so he explained in more detail. Senior Teng, is what Senior Zhou just said true? It had been less than a year since Yu Haoran showed the formation cultivation of the Grandmaster realm. With his amazing talent in formation, it was normal for him to break through the realm of formation Great Grandmaster in less than a year. It was also barely acceptable for him to advance to the realm of Formation Emperor. But the realm of Formation God. Your Majesty, Brother Fengxiu is right. In the face of Emperor Qin's request for confirmation, Yuan Zhu nodded solemnly and confirmed. The formation that Prince Consort is setting up at this moment is indeed beyond the heaven level and has reached the level of the divine level. Senior Teng, Senior Zhou, is it possible that Prince Consort has advanced to the divine level of formation and become the legendary array god? After receiving Yuan Zhu's confirmation, Emperor Qin's inner feelings were not surprise, but a little panic. If Yu Haoran's formation cultivation had advanced to the divine level, then his performance had far exceeded the scope of a genius. This was no longer a blessing for Princess Ling, Fei, and Emperor Qin's kingdom, but a disaster. Your Majesty, whether it is the martial god of martial arts realm or the divine realm of auxiliary cultivation system, as long as it is promoted to this realm, there will be a vision of heaven and earth that will alarm all creatures. Seeing Emperor Qin's expression, sometimes bitter, sometimes worried, sometimes determined, and sometimes distressed, Yuan Zhu knew that Emperor Qin's mind was disturbed by his own speculation. If he did not quickly eliminate the disturbed mind, it was very likely that it would lead to a fundamental change in Emperor Qin's attitude towards Yu Haoran. This was also an unbearable and painful loss for Emperor Qin's kingdom and the heavenly martial arts sect. Therefore, Yuan Zhu hurriedly reminded him, in the past year, there has been no vision of heaven and earth in the Tianxian continent, which means that Prince Consort's formation has not broken through to the divine level. Perhaps his ability to set up a divine-level formation is directly related to the 9 formation flags he used. After hearing Yuan Zhu's reminder, his panicked mood calmed down instantly. Emperor Qin looked at Yu Haoran, who was less than 100 meters away from him, and said in an expectant tone, "It seems that we can only wait until Prince Consort finishes setting up the formation and let him explain it in person. Second clone, immediately take out 9 spiritual veins of the upper grade of the 8th level, 6 spiritual veins of the upper grade of the 7th level, and 3 spiritual veins of the upper grade of the 6th level." When the 9,000-meter-tall demons lifted the mansion to a height of 999 meters, the pagoda's spirit immediately instructed the second clone in the sea of consciousness. The second clone, who instantly returned to the victor, immediately took out 18 spiritual veins of different grades, and then quickly removed the talismans attached to the spiritual veins and directly threw them out of the space of the sea of consciousness. Chapter 1230. In the sky above the prince's mansion in Xianyang City. Ow! Accompanied by 18 dragon roars that resounded through the sky, 18 white dragons of different lengths suddenly appeared in the sky above the prince's mansion, exuding strong spiritual qi. The 18 white dragons let out deafening roars as they fled in all directions of Xianyang City. This is the legendary Divine Dragon. There were already over 100,000 cultivators gathered in front of the residence. There were a dozen white-haired old men who were only martial masters. When they saw the 18 huge white dragons that suddenly appeared above the residence, they were so excited that they quickly knelt on the ground and shouted loudly. The actions of more than a dozen old men in the martial mentor realm immediately influenced many warriors with low cultivation. They also knelt on the ground, worshipping and praying. These are 9 upper rank 8 spiritual veins, 6 upper rank 7 spiritual veins, and 3 upper rank 6 spiritual veins. What do you want to do? Looking at the 18 white dragons that appeared in the sky above the mansion, Yuan Zhu could not help but frown and ask after pointing out the true nature and level of the white dragons. But neither Zhou Fengshu, who was equal to him in strength, nor Emperor Qin and others, who did not know much about the spiritual veins, could answer his question. Seeing that the 18 white dragons, who had recovered the original form of the spiritual veins, were about to escape, Thaling, who was floating in the air, had no intention of stopping them. He just looked calmly at the 9 ancient demons who were holding the mansion and slowly opening their mouths. Swish! Just as the 3 upper rank 6 spiritual veins turned into white dragons and were about to fly out of the sky above the mansion, the 3 ancient demons on the north side of the mansion suddenly opened their mouths and stretched out long blood-red tongues. The blood-red tongues were like lightning and directly entangled the bodies of the spiritual veins. The strong pulling force forcibly pulled the 3 spiritual veins back and then swallowed them little by little into their mouths. Swish! The 3 ancient demons on the east side of the mansion also used their blood-red tongues to swallow 6 upper-rank 7 spiritual veins. Swish! The 2 abyss devils on the west side of the mansion and the abyss devil on the south side of the mansion had each devoured 9 high-grade 8 spirit veins. After devouring the 18 spirit veins, the 9 evil demons quickly reached a height of 3,650 meters. Their expressions became even more ferocious and terrifying. Not good. The divine dragon has been defeated by a powerful demon and is about to be devoured. Let's hurry and help the divine dragon. As the 9 ancient demons were using their blood-red tongues to swallow the 18 spirit veins, some of the martial artists that were praying suddenly stood up and drew their weapons. They planned to attack the ancient demons and rescue the white divine dragon that was being eaten. Fortunately, Lin Yuanxiang led the 100 elite soldiers that had been transferred back from the army in the north. He used the strong, murderous aura that he emitted to intimidate the ordinary warriors who wanted to attack the ancient demons. Otherwise, with the tower spirit's indifference to all living beings, it would definitely kill these ordinary cultivators. Afterwards, it would definitely affect the reputation that Yu Haoran had painstakingly built up. Seeing that the 9 ancient demons had successfully devoured the 18 spirit veins and reached an ideal height, Thaling, who was floating in midair, continued to instruct his second clone. Get an upper rank 5 spiritual vein. After removing the seal, the second clone quickly threw the upper rank 5 spiritual vein out of his mind. He looked at the mansion with anticipation. He wanted to see what kind of shocking fairyland the prince's mansion that Thaling had personally built would eventually evolve into. Rank 5. For the spiritual veins in the Tianxian continent, rank 5 was a watershed in terms of quality. For spiritual veins below rank 5, the spiritual body would not exceed 5,000 meters in length. Furthermore, they could only act based on instinct. For spiritual veins above rank 5, not only could they give birth to intelligence, but their length could also break through the limit of 5,000 meters. In the end, they could even exceed 10,000 meters. Look, the real dragon god has come to take revenge. The 9 damned demons are in danger. Looking at the majestic white dragon that appeared in the sky above the mansion, not only was it more than 10,000 meters long, but it was also intimidated by Lin Yuanxiang and the other's strong, murderous aura. The ordinary cultivators, who were feeling sad for the dragon god that was devoured by the demons, immediately shouted loudly, "Your Majesty, those spiritual veins that Prince Consorma took out just now, were they given by you?" Looking at the upper rank 5 spiritual vein that had transformed into a dragon that was more than 10,000 meters long, Zhou Fengshu asked with a shocked expression. Although the Zhou family's inheritance could be traced back to the Middle Ages, it was limited by the influence of the environment of heaven and earth, as well as the consumption of special reasons. The number of spiritual veins accumulated by the entire Zhou family was not many, let alone the high-rank 5 spiritual vein. And Yu Haoran, who had only debuted for 2 years, was able to take out such a large number of high-rank spiritual veins without batting an eyelid. How could this not make Zhou Fengshu feel shocked and puzzled? In fact, not only was Zhou Fengshu shocked and puzzled, But the ancestor Yuan and Prince Yifeng also looked at Emperor Qin. Senior Zhou, Senior Teng. Although my Emperor Qin kingdom is about to unify the entire southern region, the richness of the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the southern region, as well as the number of heaven and earth treasures, I believe you are very clear. Facing the gazes of the crowd, Emperor Qin couldn't help but remind them with a wry smile. Not to mention that it is impossible for my Emperor Qin kingdom to accumulate so many spiritual veins. Even if there is, I can't give them all to Prince Consort. Not to mention, there is also a high rank 5 spiritual vein that is suitable for increasing the luck of the dragon vein. It seems that Prince Consort Ma is not only a martial arts genius, but also a favored child who is protected by the heavens and earth. Emperor Qin's reminder with a wry smile made Zhou Fengxiu and the others immediately realize that the spiritual veins that Yu Haoran had taken out just now were probably all his own opportunities. Looking at Yu Haoran, who used his origin energy and soul force to condense a giant palm, and was using all his strength to suppress the high-rank 5 spiritual vein that was planning to escape, Zhou Fengxiu couldn't help but sigh. At the same time, he finally made up his mind to persuade the patriarch to use the family's true trump card. Humph! Looking at the high-rank 5 spiritual vein that had recovered its 10,000 meters long spirit body and was planning to escape from the mansion, Thowling couldn't help but snort coldly. Then, he used the origin energy in Yu Haoran's Dantian and his own soul force to condense a giant palm that covered the sky and the sun. Then, he tightly held onto the white dragon that had transformed from the spiritual vein. Immediately after, the giant palm that was holding the high-rank 5 spiritual vein fiercely slammed into the mansion that was being held by the 9 ancient demons. The imagined scene of the mansion being smashed did not appear. The giant palm and the spiritual vein completely merged into the mansion. Chapter 1231. Above the prince's mansion in Xianyang City, Zhou Fengxiu could not help but sigh as he looked at the indistinct residence surrounded by spiritual fog. It gave off an illusory and mysterious feeling. Fairyland on Earth. Nodding his head, Yuan Zhu, who also showed a shocked look on his face, echoed his praise. The Jade Cliff Pavilion is free and unfettered, and the Blue Sea Fairy is spirited. The mansion built by the prince's son-in-law must not be inferior to the legendary fairyland. After praising, Yuan Zhu looked at Yu Haoran floating above the fairyland and sighed to Zhou Fengxiu with expectation in his eyes. Such a beautiful fairyland. I don't know if you and I are lucky enough to enter it and explore the mystery of the fairyland. After hearing Yuan Zhu's expectant sigh, Emperor Qin, who was shocked by the fairyland mansion, suddenly felt happy. It was hard to say whether Zhou Fengxiu and Yuan Zhu could be invited into the fairyland mansion, but as the monarch of Emperor Qin's kingdom, Yu Haoran's father-in-law, they were certainly qualified to enter the fairyland mansion. Thinking of this, Emperor Qin planned to leave the void and then discuss with Yu Haoran about visiting the fairyland mansion. But at this time, the 9 ancient demons who had been holding up the mansion suddenly roared to the sky. With the roar resounding through the sky, an ancient demon on the north side of the mansion suddenly let go of the hands holding up the mansion, then rose into the air and sat cross-legged in the north of the mansion. Slowly closing his eyes, the ancient demon's body gradually rose a traction force that could stir the endless void and reach the stars in the sky. With a strong traction force, it began to forcibly gather the star power in the sky. Whether it was Emperor Qin and others standing in the void, or the hundreds of thousands of warriors gathered in front of the mansion, they could clearly feel a large amount of pure star power being poured into the mansion. This is, bearing the baptism of the pure star power, Zhou Fengxiu felt a familiar feeling in his heart, as if the ancient demon's method of drawing the star power was related to a lost body refining cultivation method of the Zhou family. However, the body refinement cultivation method had been lost for too long, so he couldn't be sure. As the abyss demon sitting cross-legged on the north side of the mansion began to use a special technique to draw in a large amount of pure star power, An ancient abyss demon on the east side of the mansion also let go of his hands that were holding up the mansion. Then, he sat cross-legged on the east side of the mansion and began to use the same method to draw a large amount of pure star energy into the mansion. 10 seconds later, the ancient demon on the west side of the mansion did the same thing. When all four directions of the prince's mansion were occupied by the ancient demons and attracted the endless power of the stars, even if it was daytime, and the ordinary people, without any cultivation base, could clearly see the dazzling starlight that poured into the prince's mansion like a waterfall. And the 8 ancient demons were simultaneously drawing in the power of the stars, forcing Emperor Qin and the others to retreat from the void above the mansion and look at the mansion that was enveloped in starlight from afar. The rich spiritual energy emitted by the spirit vein, the milky white energy formed by the fusion of the 5 elements and 5 ultimate formations, and the dazzling power of the stars, gradually fused into a new type of energy, a mysterious yellow energy that made the entire mansion seem even more mysterious. Seeing that only one ancient demon was still holding up the mansion, Thowling took a deep breath and quickly formed seals with his 10 fingers. Every time he merged an imprint into the residence, a dark yellow energy would slowly rise up like a fountain. Then, it would form a parabola appearing at the bottom of the residence. In the end, it formed a circular cycle. When the tower spirit formed the 8th imprint that fused with the mansion and formed 8 circular yellow energy cycles, the last primordial demon that was holding up the mansion immediately let go of its hands. Then, it rose into the air and sat cross-legged above the mansion. It used the same method to draw in the pure star energy. Looking at the mansion that could float in the air without the support of the 9 ancient demons, Meng Zhengkai, who had been fortunate enough to see the heavenly palace of the Yushu Temple, couldn't help but gasp and murmur to himself, "Prince Consort, you don't want to build a mansion that can float in the air like the heavenly palace of the Yushu Temple, do you?" Meng Zhengkai's murmur also made Emperor Qin, Yuan Zhu, and Zhou Fengshu immediately guess the real ambition of Yu Haoran. Because the mansion built by Yu Haoran himself not only floated higher than the Yushu Temple, but the mysterious yellow energy brought about by the mysterious yellow energy was more in line with the word heavenly palace. Ling Fei, tell sister, everything in front of us is not an illusion. In the air, 10,000 meters away from the prince's mansion, Yusiki pointed to the mansion that was not inferior to the heavenly palace and asked in disbelief, "Sister, it's true, everything in front of us is real." In the face of Yusiki's interrogation, Qin Lingfei nodded and confirmed with tears of happiness in her eyes. Others may not know the real reason why Yu Haoran used such a heaven-defying method, consumed so many spiritual veins, and personally built the heavenly palace. But Qin Lingfei was very clear in her heart. This was because when the date of the wedding was set, Yu Haoran had personally promised her that he would give her a wedding that would shake the entire profound sky continent and make countless women envious and jealous. It would be a wedding that they would fantasize about for their entire lives. Looking at the mansion floating in the air, as beautiful as the heavenly palace, she knew that Yu Haoran had fulfilled his promise to her, and she would become the happiest woman in the world. After the last imprint was integrated into the mansion, Thowling secretly breathed a sigh of relief. Then he walked to the side of the ancient demon, who was sitting cross-legged on the top of the mansion, and reached out his hand to suck at his forehead. A mysterious yellow imprint slowly floated out from his forehead, and was then taken back into the victor by Thowling. After losing the mysterious yellow imprint, the ancient demon instantly turned back into a 100-meter-long array flag, and then slowly shrunk, and finally became a palm-sized array flag. Looking at the array flag floating in the air, Thowling also took it back into the victor. Although he had lost the ancient demon and the array flag, the suction force from where he was sitting did not disappear and was still guiding the endless power of the stars into the mansion. Then, Thowling used the same method to take away the remaining 8 ancient demons' mysterious yellow imprints and array flags. Yu Haoran, I've finished building the heavenly palace, and I'll leave the rest to you. After taking back the last mysterious yellow imprint and array flag, Thaling said to Yu Haoran in a slightly tired tone, Thaling, you've worked hard. Knowing that the last 9 mysterious yellow imprints had consumed a lot of Thaling's soul, Yu Haoran, who had regained control of his body, hurriedly reminded him, Go and have a good rest, and leave the rest to me. Chapter 1232. Xianyang City. In the sky above the prince's mansion, Yu Haoran, who had regained control of his physical body, strolled slowly in the immortal mansion. While admiring the beautiful scenery of the mansion, he also carefully sensed the mysterious and powerful energy of the mysterious yellow energy. Yu Haoran, how do you feel? After handing over control of his physical body, Thaling did not immediately return to the victor to rest. Instead, he took out a portion of the soul stones that Yu Haoran had stored in the victor. He asked expectantly as he used the soul stones to recover the soul power he had just consumed. Powerful, very powerful, very powerful, Yu Haoran praised in pleasant surprise. After carefully sensing it just now, he discovered that the mysterious yellow energy formed by the fusion of the spiritual energy in the spirit vein, the milky white energy, and the power of the stars had greatly improved the grade of his physical body, the origin energy in his dantian, the soul in his sea of consciousness, and the comprehension of the laws of nature. This kind of improvement was hundreds of times more effective than pure spiritual energy and tens of times more effective than pure spiritual liquid. That's for sure. After hearing Yu Haoran's evaluation of the mysterious yellow energy, Thaling was deeply gratified and explained proudly. The reason why the 3 different types of energy could successfully fuse into the mysterious yellow energy was because I used the origin imprint of the victor. Thaling, will the consumption just now affect the victor's injuries? After hearing that the 3 different types of energy could finally fuse into the mysterious yellow energy because of the use of the victor's origin imprint, Yu Haoran could not help but ask worriedly. After all, he had previously heard Thaling explain the importance of the origin imprint to the victor. He also knew that if the origin imprint was used too much, the consequences would be severe for the victor and Thaling. It's fine. The tower genie waved its hand with a smile. Now that the victor is able to absorb the energy used for healing, he only needs half a month to completely recover from the consumption just now. That's good. After hearing the pagoda spirit's explanation, Yu Haoran heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he left the mansion and flew directly to the Qin Emperor and the others who were standing 1,000 meters away from the mansion. Seeing Yu Haoran flying over, the Qin Emperor, who had been yearning to enter the immortal realm residence and explore its mysteries, immediately called out to him with a smile. Prince Consort, Haoran greets your majesty. After saluting Emperor Qin, Yu Haoran nodded to Zhou Fengshu, an ancestor, and others. Haoran, may I have the honor of entering? After Yu Haoran greeted Zhou Fengshu and the others, the Qin Emperor hurriedly expressed his thoughts. However, before he could finish, he was interrupted by the Yin family ancestor who rushed over. Your Majesty, something happened. The immortal mansion, which could float in the air and emit mysterious yellow gas, was very tempting, but compared with the trouble that Emperor Qin was facing, the ancestor Yin was not in the mood to pay attention to it. Prime Minister, what's going on? Anyway, the immortal mansion was floating there. With his relationship with Yu Haoran, he could enter whenever he wanted. Therefore, Emperor Qin, who forcibly suppressed the incomparable desire in his heart, planned to listen to the trouble mentioned by the ancestor Yin. First, he glanced at Yu Haoran, who looked indifferent, and the ancestor Yan's face showed a trace of embarrassment. Prime Minister, Prince Consort is not an outsider. You can say anything in front of him. The old ancestor of the Yin clan revealed a troubled expression. This let the Qin Emperor know that the so-called trouble must have something to do with Yu Haoran. Under normal circumstances, the person involved should be avoided. But as Yu Haoran's ability became stronger and stronger, Emperor Qin was worried that it would cause his dissatisfaction, so he decided to explain everything clearly in front of him. Since it was Emperor Qin's order, the ancestor Yin did not continue to make things difficult and began to talk about the disaster that the Emperor Qin's kingdom was facing. Your Majesty, Elder Shao, together with 100 great scholars, used the means of sounding the bell and blood remonstrance to beg your Majesty to withdraw the imperial edict of honoring only the prince consort and to abide by the laws of the Emperor Qin's kingdom and severely punish the prince consort. Damn it! After hearing the ancestor Yan's words, Emperor Qin's fists under his sleeves tightly clenched, and his face was as gloomy as water as he secretly cursed. Senior Yin, what is the imperial edict of honoring only the prince consort? Yu Haoran slightly frowned and asked. Replying to the prince consort, some time ago, your Majesty issued an imperial edict. Facing Yu Haoran's interrogation, the ancestor Yin explained in detail after getting permission from Emperor Qin, withdrawing the titles of the 35 prince consorts of the great Emperor Qin's kingdom, and then giving them new titles, only keeping the title of prince consort for you. After hearing the ancestor Yan's explanation, Yu Haoran turned his head to look at Emperor Qin, and his eyes revealed a trace of emotion. Then, he continued to look at the ancestor Yin and asked, Senior Yin, who is Elder Shao? Why is he targeting me? Why did he give me a list of crimes? Replying to the prince consort, Elder Shao is the former grand scholar of the cabinet, imperial preceptor Shao Zhongyin. Facing Yu Haoran's 3 questions, the ancestor Yin answered one by one. The reason why Elder Shao is targeting the prince consort is because of the imperial edict issued by your Majesty, and also because of the prince's mansion that was built for you. The ancestor Yin immediately gave an explanation for the first 2 questions, but when faced with the 3rd question, he suddenly became silent. This was because he was too familiar with Yu Haoran's vengeful personality. If he knew that each of the crimes that Elder Shao listed out for him were crimes that, according to the laws of the Great Qin Kingdom, would he not be so angry that he would slaughter Elder Shao and hundreds of grand scholars? Although Yu Haoran could guess the reason for the Yin ancestor's silence, he wanted to hear it with his own ears. He wanted to hear just how many crimes Shao Zhongyuan listed out for him. Therefore, he turned his head to look at Emperor Qin and begged, Your Majesty, Old Prime Minister, the prince consort will know about the crimes that Elder Shao listed out sooner or later, so tell him the truth now. Emperor Qin ordered as he nodded to Yu Haoran. Very well. Facing Emperor Qin's order, the ancestor Yin helplessly nodded and then listed out the crimes that Shao Zhongyuan listed out for him. The prince consort is of lowly birth and has a tyrannical temperament. He is not a good match for the princess. I implore your Majesty to annul the engagement between the prince consort and the princess, and then, according to the teachings of the great Qin's ancestors, grant the prince consort death to protect the princess's innocence. This is the first crime. After listing out the first crime, the ancestor Yin hurriedly glanced at Yu Haoran from the corner of his eyes. When he saw that Yu Haoran's face instantly darkened, his heart couldn't help but sink. Senior Yin continued, taking a deep breath and forcibly suppressing the killing intent that surged out from his heart. Yu Haoran's expression returned to normal as he indicated. The prince consort is proficient in demonic arts, inciting your Majesty, disrupting the order of the court. According to the laws, he should be executed, and his 3 generations of blood relatives will be punished. The prince consort has violated the teachings of the great Qin's ancestors, claiming the title of prince consort without permission and privately establishing the prince consort. According to the laws, he should be executed, and his 6 generations of blood relatives will be punished. The prince consort has executed an important official of the court on the street. According to the laws, he should be executed, and his 9 generations of blood relatives will be punished. Chapter 1233. Xianyang City, in the sky above the prince's mansion. 9. Shao Zhongyuan listed a total of 9 crimes for Yu Haoran. According to the laws and ancestral teachings of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, the punishment for each crime was death, and each crime would implicate all blood relatives within 9 generations. After hearing the Yin family's ancestor list out the 9 crimes listed by Shao Zhongyuan one by one, The faces of everyone present turned gloomy. As for the hot-tempered Meng Zhengkai, he gritted his teeth and cursed. Corrupt scholars who harm the country deserve to die. Prince Yifeng, the Li family's ancestor, and the Zhao family's ancestor were calculating in a low voice to see how they could help Yu Haoran mitigate his crimes, or at least escape death. Otherwise, with Yu Haoran's vengeful personality and bloody revenge methods, he would definitely set off a bloody storm in the great Emperor Qin's kingdom. However, there were two people present who were happy in their hearts. They were the ancestor from the heavenly martial sect and Zhou Fengshu from the Zhou family. Senior Yin, thank you. After listening to Xiao Zhongyuan's list of 9 crimes, not only did the killing intent instantly disappear without a trace, but he was also not so angry in his heart. After cupping his hands and thanking the Yin family's ancestor, Yu Haoran turned his head and said to Emperor Qin, "Your Majesty, I'll leave this matter to you. I'll take my leave first." Then, he waved at Yu Siki and Qin Lingfei, who were 10,000 meters away from the mansion, and returned to the mansion. "Everyone, follow me to the Hall of Rites, and see what Xiao Zhongyuan wants to do." Seeing that Yu Haoran was not interfering in this matter, Emperor Qin couldn't help but let out a sigh of relief, and then ordered everyone present. Zhou Fengshu and the ancestor looked at each other, and found that their eyes flashed with joy and vigilance. Then, the two of them did not leave with the crowd. Instead, they used a secret technique to disappear into the air. So beautiful! Following the gap in the formation opened by Yu Haoran, Qin Lingfei and Yu Siki, who entered the mansion, sighed from the bottom of their hearts. Walking in front of Qin Lingfei and reaching out to hold her hand, Yu Haoran said tenderly, "Lingfei, you will be the mistress of this mansion from now on." Haoran, although she had already guessed it, after getting confirmation from Yu Haoran, Qin Lingfei's heart instantly felt an even stronger sense of happiness. If it wasn't for the fact that Yu Siki had a special status, she would have already given him a passionate kiss. "Xiao, where's sister?" Yu Siki, who had also fallen in love with this immortal mansion, quickly asked after hearing Yu Haoran's promise to Qin Lingfei. As the saying goes, a married daughter is like spilled water. Remembering clearly that Yu Siki had mocked him as an unfilial son who forgot his mother after marrying a wife, Yu Haoran certainly could not let go of the opportunity to fight back. He also used the saying to mock her. "Sister, you will marry someone sooner or later and become someone else's daughter-in-law, so don't think about the family property that your brother has earned with great difficulty." Huh. After hearing Yu Haoran's sarcasm, Qin Lingfei suddenly thought of Yu Siki's complaint to Yu Haoran when they first met. She was immediately amused by the siblings' unwillingness to suffer losses. "Yu Haoran, are you itching for a beating? Have you forgotten how I spanked you before?" Yu Haoran's sarcasm and Qin Lingfei's laughter made Yu Siki immediately angry and threatened. "Sister," seeing that Yu Siki exposed his embarrassing childhood in front of Qin Lingfei, Yu Haoran immediately shouted with dissatisfaction. "Xiaoran, if you still want to maintain the image of a perfect man in front of Lingfei, then you should know what to do." Seeing that she had finally caught Yu Haoran's weakness, Yu Siki triumphantly threatened. "Sister, you're the only family member who is related to me by blood in this world, and Lingfei is the woman I love most in my life. Both of you are the people that I, Yu Haoran, am willing to sacrifice my life to protect." Speaking of this, Yu Haoran's 10 fingers quickly formed two imprints that allowed him to enter and leave the Fairyland Mansion. One imprint was imprinted on Qin Lingfei's forehead, and the other was imprinted on Yu Siki's forehead. Thus, you are the same as Lingfei. You are also the mistress of this immortal mansion. Xiaoran. After hearing Yu Haoran's truest feelings from the bottom of his heart, Yu Siki directly walked to his side, reached out and hugged his left arm, and softly called out, moved. Qin Lingfei, who was also moved, affectionately hugged his other arm and softly called out, "Haoran, sister, Lingfei, let's go sit in the wind pavilion for a while." Taking a deep breath and adjusting the tenderness that had just emerged in his heart, Yu Haoran suggested with a smile. Yu Siki and Qin Lingfei both obediently nodded in agreement. Sitting upright on a stone chair in the wind pavilion, Qin Lingfei took out a tea set and then quietly began to boil and brew tea. Yu Haoran, on the other hand, watched the entire process of boiling and brewing tea calmly, which was rare for him. "Prince Consort, are you there?" Just as Qin Lingfei was about to complete the final step of brewing tea, Chief Steward Zhang's voice suddenly came from outside the mansion. After gently waving his sleeve and opening the formation to enter the mansion, Yu Haoran said with a smile, "Chief Steward Jiang, come in." Just by absorbing a trace of the dark yellow energy in the mansion, the bottleneck that had troubled him for several years vaguely showed signs of a breakthrough. This caused Chief Steward Jiang, who had stepped in the mansion, to suddenly feel a tempestuous shock in his heart. However, when he thought of the confrontational conflict in the ceremonial hall, the shock in his heart was immediately replaced by worry. Seeing Yu Haoran and Ling Fei sitting upright in the wind pavilion, Chief Steward Jiang hurriedly knelt on one knee and saluted. "This old servant greets Prince Consort, Princess Ling Fei, and Miss Siki." Knowing that Chief Steward Jiang would not listen even if he tried to persuade him, Yu Haoran was too lazy to continue persuading him. After indicating for him to quickly get up, he asked with a smile, "Chief Steward Jiang, why do you have time to come to my prince's mansion instead of serving by his majesty's side?" "Prince Consort, the Empress Dowager sent this old servant." Raising his head and glancing at Qin Lingfei and Yusiki, a trace of hesitation flashed in Chief Steward Zhang's eyes, but in the end, he still told the truth. "What could it be that old woman wants to cause trouble for me again?" Hearing that it was Zishuan who sent Chief Steward Jiang to find him, Yu Haoran's first reaction was that the old woman had taken a fancy to the fairyland mansion that he had painstakingly built. His expression immediately turned gloomy. "Haoran, show some respect to the Empress Dowager." Hearing Yu Haoran talking about the old woman, Ling Fei hurriedly pulled his arm and reminded him, afraid that the powerful Zishuan would hear it. Pretending that he did not hear Yu Haoran's words just now, Chief Steward Jiang immediately told him the reason why Zishuan sent him here in full detail. "Ling Fei, what kind of background does Xiao Zhongyuan have to make His Majesty so afraid?" Yu Haoran asked with a solemn expression. Chapter 1234. Xianying City, within the ceremonial hall. Facing the overbearing Xiao Zhen, Emperor Qin's face was so gloomy that it seemed as if water could drip from it. He had taken back the imperial edict of the emperor's son-in-law, removed Yu Haoran from his position as the Northern Great General, and prohibited Yu Haoran from participating in any government or military affairs. As the ruler of a country who controlled the lives and deaths of hundreds of millions of subjects, taking 3 steps back in succession was already giving face to his subjects. But what about Xiao Zhongyuan? He would not give up until he killed Yu Haoran and destroyed Yu Haoran's clan. He was forcing himself to fall out with Yu Haoran and forcing Yu Haoran to completely sever ties with the Emperor Qin. If it weren't for the person behind Xiao Zhen, Emperor Qin would have had the urge to kill all of the Confucian scholars in the Emperor Qin's kingdom. Standing in the hall, Meng Zhengkai, Prince Yifeng, and the others had the same thoughts as Emperor Qin. This was because Yu Haoran was the foundation of whether or not these old fellows, who had reached the quasi-martial saint realm, could smoothly break through to the martial saint realm and win 5,000 years of life. If Xiao Zhongyuan wanted to force Yu Haoran to sever ties with the Emperor Qin, wouldn't he be asking for the lives of these people? Wouldn't he be breaking the foundation of their clans that have been passed down for thousands of years? At the same time, if it weren't for the fear of the person behind Xiao Zhongyuan, they would have already furiously charged up and cut him into pieces to vent the killing intent that was surging in their hearts. "Elder Xiao, what if I don't agree?" Emperor Qin took a deep breath and forcefully suppressed his anger that was on the verge of exploding. He planned to shed all pretense of cordiality and question Xiao Zhongyuan. Facing Emperor Qin's question, Xiao Zhongyuan straightened his body and threatened, "If your majesty continues to protect traitors, then I will unite all of the Confucian scholars in the world and write down the crimes of your majesty and Yu Haoran. I will let the entire world know how the grand Emperor Qin's kingdom fell into the hands of traitors and perished at the hands of an incapable ruler. Elder Xiao, are you not afraid that if you anger me, I will burn the books and bury the scholars again? Xiao Zhongyuan's threat made Emperor Qin have the urge to fight to the death. Emperor Qin directly stood up from his dragon throne and threatened. Xiao Zhongyuan's eyes were filled with dense, killing qi. I am not afraid of being smashed to pieces, but I will leave my innocence in the world. Facing the Qin Emperor's threat of burning books and burying Confucians, Xiao Zhongyuan fearlessly took 3 steps forward. His entire body exuded a righteous aura as he recited a poem. A trace of mockery appeared in his eyes as he threatened Xiao Zhongyuan. Your Majesty, since ancient times, justice has been in the hearts of the people. I think there will be many knowledgeable people in the world who will come to stop your Majesty from not distinguishing between traitors and traitors. They will harm the loyal and righteous, and will restore the glory of Emperor Qin's kingdom. You, facing Xiao Zhongyuan's threat, while Emperor Qin was burning with anger, his heart also surged with a desire for power. If his cultivation reached the martial venerable realm, if he could truly control the Emperor Realm Sword, then today he would not be forced by his officials, and he would not be threatened by the old man who was about to enter the ground. Xiao Zhongyuan, if it weren't for the Judge Pen Xiao Jiufa, who ranked 5th among the top 10 rogue cultivators in the Tianxin continent, supporting you, would you have the courage to show your unyielding loyalty? Just when Emperor Qin was suppressed by Xiao Zhongyuan's threat and didn't know what to say, an indifferent question suddenly came from outside the Hall of Rites. Xiao Zhongyuan, if Xiao Jiufa wasn't your biological father, those so-called loyal and righteous scholars around you would have the backbone and courage to accompany you to force the Holy Emperor. Accompanied by the indifferent, questioning voice, Yu Haoran stepped into the Hall of Rites with an indifferent expression. Aren't you afraid of implicating their wives and children behind them to be buried with them? Glancing contemptuously at Xiao Zhongyuan and the 100 scholars, Yu Haoran cupped his hands and bowed. Your son, Yu Haoran, greets father. Long live father, long live father, long live father. Prince Consort, you and I are already a family. There's no need to be so polite. The sudden appearance of Yu Haoran and the change in the way he addressed him made Emperor Qin aware of his intentions. At the same time, he was deeply gratified, and at the same time, he hurriedly and happily hinted, Yu Haoran, even if you're a grandmaster of alchemy whose name shakes the world, you're still a subject of Emperor Qin. According to the laws of Emperor Qin, when you meet the Holy Emperor, you still have to kneel and kowtow. Yu Haoran's repeated questioning just now made Xiao Zhongyuan, who was originally very dissatisfied with him, immediately reprimanded him with a stern voice. It seems that this old man will have to add another crime to the memorial, and that is contempt of the imperial court, lack of etiquette, and offending the Holy Emperor. According to the law, you should be beheaded. Facing Xiao Zhongyuan's reprimand, Yu Haoran didn't show any anger. He still maintained an indifferent expression and indifferently retorted. Xiao Zhongyuan, you still haven't answered my 2 questions just now. My father is my father. Zhongyuan will always be Zhongyuan. Facing Yu Haoran's counterattack, Xiao Zhongyuan arrogantly retorted. When I came to the Hall of Rites, this prince consort calculated in detail from beginning to end. If I use some forbidden secret techniques, this prince consort should be able to display the strength of a peak 7th grade martial honorable. In the face of Xiao Zhongyuan's arrogant counterattack, Yu Haoran nodded and then muttered to himself, if I use the Emperor Realm lower grade sword that I obtained some time ago, I can barely kill an opponent at the peak of 8th grade martial honorable. At this point, he raised his head and glanced at Xiao Zhongyuan and the 100 great scholars standing behind him. The corners of his mouth slightly raised as he asked, Xiao Zhongyuan, I wonder how the Judge Pen Xiao Jiufa's strength is. Can he withstand the challenge of a peak 8th grade martial honorable? What do you mean? Xiao Zhongyuan asked in a slightly flustered manner for the first time. Old man, if this prince consort beheads Xiao Jiufa, I don't know if you will still have the backbone to continue standing here. Will the so-called loyal and courageous great scholars behind you have the courage to continue to accompany you? Yu Haoran asked with a chuckle as his indifferent expression was replaced by a smile. You, Senior Shao has been famous for 100 years. He is ranked 5th among the top 10 rogue cultivators. How can a rash kid who hasn't even grown out his hair defeat Senior Shao? In the face of Yu Haoran's counterattack, a great scholar standing behind Shao Zhongyin immediately jumped out and reprimanded him. I think the idiom "don't know the immensity of heaven and earth" describes people like you. In the face of the great scholar's reprimand, Yu Haoran was not angry at all and said with a smile, Xiao Jiufa became famous in the rogue cultivators meeting 70 years ago. With the help of his life weapon, the Judge Pen, he defeated 137 rogue cultivators of the same realm in a row. Later, he was respected as one of the top 10 rogue cultivators in the Tianxian continent. Xiao Jiufa became a martial honorable in the Broken Sea secret realm. After 13 years of experience in cultivation, he is now a peerless expert in the early 3rd grade martial honorable. Xiao Jiufa is now living in Yama City. He is recruiting disciples, planning to establish a sect and become a master overlord. Chapter 1235. Inside the ceremonial hall. Ignoring the gloomy faces of Xiao Zhongyuan and the others, Yu Haoran spoke to Emperor Qin, Meng Zhengkai, Prince Yifeng, and the others. Your Majesty, ministers, if you have free time, you might as well wait for a few hours in the ceremonial hall. Wait until this prince consort returns with Xiao Jiufa's head, and then we'll watch a face-changing drama? Prince consort, are you confident? Emperor Qin asked worriedly. Your Majesty, he's just an ant in the early 3rd grade martial revered realm. He can only obediently die however I want him to die. Yu Haoran replied domineeringly. TSK. Facing Yu Haoran's domineering reply, Emperor Qin did not have time to express his opinion. Among the group of generals on the west side of the hall, a burly middle-aged general in his 40s could not help but sneer. Looking at the general who sneered disdainfully, Yu Haoran frowned slightly. Gu Chang, what did you mean by sneering just now? Seeing his subordinate sneer disdainfully, Meng Zhengkai, who was once the Grand Marshal of the army, immediately scolded angrily. At the same time, he also used his spiritual sense to introduce Gu Chang's origin. Prince Consort, Gu Chang is the younger brother of General Gu Yu. Originally, according to the unspoken rules of our great Qin army, after Gu Yu was accidentally killed, Gu Chang, whose strength and commanding ability were not inferior to Gu Yu, should have taken over the position of general of the left army. However, you know the final result. Marshal Meng, although I don't agree with Scholar Lu's evaluation of the Prince Consort, but to look down on one of the top 10 rogue cultivators in the Tianxian continent, Senior Shao, who has the peerless cultivation of a 3rd grade martial revered realm. Facing Meng Zhengkai's question, Gu Chang replied fearlessly. I think, among the 9 crimes listed by Elder Shao, the crime of disrespect, arrogance, and ignorance is irrefutable. Prince Consort, you can't deny it. Gu Chang, shaking his head, Yu Haoran signaled Meng Zhengkai not to speak and continued with a smile on his face. General Gu, if it weren't for the wedding of this Prince Consort and Princess Ling Fei the day after tomorrow, there would be no need for this Prince Consort to kill Xiao Jiufa personally. After the wedding, he had to fully prepare for the Hidden Dragon ranking battle between the Southern region and the 5 regions. After the Hidden Dragon rankings competition, whether it was adventuring in the 10 Great Forbidden Lands or using the interstellar teleportation talisman to travel through the endless void, it would be very difficult for him to take care of Qin Lingfei and Yusiki for a very long time in the future. Therefore, before the Hidden Dragon rankings competition, he had to show enough deterrence to ensure the safety of Qin Lingfei and Yusiki. With my ability in alchemy, I only need a 3rd grade 7 lives mysterious gate pill, an Ice Heart Jadebone pill, or a 3-striped Cyan Spirit pill. I think there will be countless experts at the peak of the 9th grade martial revered realm and the potential Emperor Wu realm who would be willing to exchange Xiao Jufa's head. After leaving a warning that made everyone's expression change, Yu Haoran stepped out of the Hall of Rites and went straight to Yanluo City, which was more than 20,000 kilometers away from Xianying City. Looking at Yu Haoran, who stepped out of the Hall of Rites, Xiao Zhongyuan couldn't help but frown. He didn't quite understand what Yu Haoran meant by leaving those words. However, the faces of the great scholars standing behind him instantly turned as pale as white paper. They were bound to use the laws of the Emperor Qin Kingdom to kill Yu Haoran. The biggest reliance was Xiao Jiufa, who was a third-grade martial revered realm expert and one of the top 10 rogue cultivators in the Tianxin continent. Originally, they thought that relying on Xiao Jiufa's deterrence was enough to make the Emperor Qin choose to surrender and finally achieve their wish. Then, with the deterrence formed by killing Yu Haoran, they could eliminate the damage and weakening of Confucianism caused by burning books and burying Confucianism a year ago. This would allow the Confucians to re-enter the imperial court and regain the power to govern the world. However, they neglected the most critical issue, which was Yu Haoran's ability in alchemy. Except for Xiao Zhongyuan, who had never really come into contact with martial arts because of his physique, the great scholars behind him were mostly in the martial ancestor and martial king realm. They were very clear about the powerful influence of a great grandmaster at the peak of alchemy. Perhaps Yu Haoran really had the strength and means to kill Xiao Jiufa. Looking at Yu Haoran, who stepped out of the Hall of Rites, Emperor Qin felt relaxed and happy, but also deeply depressed. He couldn't help but shake his head and smile bitterly. For many years, the heavy pressure that Xiao Jiufa had brought to him had instinctively formed a trace of fear. Therefore, in the face of Xiao Zhongyuan's coercion, he only thought about how to save Yu Haoran's life and how to not let Yu Haoran and the Emperor Qin kingdom truly break off. Instead, he ignored Yu Haoran's ability in alchemy. The 7 Lives Profound Gate Pill was very attractive to the peerless experts at the peak of the 9th grade martial revered realm and the almighty experts at the quasi-emperor Wu realm. He had personally witnessed the competition and trade of the pills in the Hengduan Mountains. He knew that Xiao Jiufa, who had given him a headache for decades, was not a big threat to Yu Haoran, who could refine the 7 Lives Profound Gate Pill. Thinking of this, Emperor Qin put away the bitter smile on his face, and then gave a look to Director Jiang, who hurried back. Director Jiang, who had been serving Emperor Qin for decades, immediately understood the order given by the look. He immediately turned and left the Hall of Rites, and then went to gather all the imperial guards in the palace to prepare for the second burning of books and burying of scholars. Yanluo City, located in the north of Xianying City, was a major city with a population of more than millions. Yanluo City nominally belonged to the great Emperor Qin Kingdom, but in fact, it didn't need to pay any taxes. It was a small kingdom that completely operated and developed independently. Moreover, there was neither the city lord's mansion nor any family or faction in Yanluo City. All of this originated from one of the top 10 rogue cultivators in the city, Xiao Jiufa, who was known as the Judge's Pen. Looking at a 99-meter-tall, 18-story tower made of black iron, floating in the air, Yu Haoran's eyes flashed with a trace of contempt. Yu Haoran, it seems that this Xiao Jiufa's ambition is not small. Looking at the 18-story tower made of black iron, each story was 5.5 meters tall, like the legendary 18 levels of hell. Thowling couldn't help but ridicule. He actually wants to rely on his own strength to recreate the 18 levels of hell that controlled reincarnation in ancient times. No matter what ambition he has, I'll destroy it with a stick. Taking out the white stick of the upper venerable realm and activating the power of the ancestral witch body, Yu Haoran stepped on the void and flew into the void and said domineeringly, "Skyward stick." Chapter 1236. Yanluo City. With the help of the weapon spirit, the Skyward Staff technique's power had already reached the peak of a 5th grade martial honorable. Therefore, when the white staff was 3,000 meters away from Yanluo City, the experts of the martial ancestor realm and above in the city all felt the arrival of a terrifying power. They all left their places of cultivation and raised their heads to look at Howren and the white staff that was charging towards the Black Tower. "Who are you?" A black-clothed, middle-aged expert instantly appeared on top of the Black Tower and asked with a fierce expression, "The person who will take your life." Howren, who had increased the speed of the white staff's attack, replied with a murderous aura. "You want to take the life of Magistrate Shui? You're not qualified," the black-clothed, middle-aged expert said arrogantly in the face of Howren's murderous aura. Then, an 80-centimeter-long staff that was dark purple in color appeared in his hand. The tip of the staff was made up of dozens of dragon whiskers. Facing the white staff that was at the peak of a fifth-grade martial honorable, the black-clothed, middle-aged expert, who was only a third-grade martial honorable, did not panic in the slightest. He waved the brush and wrote the word trap in the air. Just as the word trap was formed, Howren felt a mysterious power obstructing the white staff in his hand. The speed of the attack immediately decreased by a tenth. Howren, immediately use all your strength and increase the strength of the staff attack. Thaling, who was more familiar with the power of the law, warned with a slightly frightened voice as he felt a special power of the law that had disappeared since ancient times from the word trap, written by the black-clothed, middle-aged expert. That's because the black-clothed, middle-aged man is a peerless expert who has comprehended the power of reincarnation. The power of reincarnation has an innate restraining effect on all spirits that do not have a physical body. Therefore, I can't use the power of the victor, nor can I use the prince consort's body technique. After hearing Thaling's warning, Howren took a deep breath and directly used 90% of his Yuan Qi and soul power. Then, with the help of the weapon spirit, he increased the power of the white staff's attack to the early stage of 6th grade martial honorable. The black-clothed, middle-aged powerhouse frowned slightly when he saw that the law of reincarnation martial skill cast with the help of the magistrate's brush had only slowed down the white rod's attack by 1/10. Then, he waved the magistrate's brush in his hand and wrote the word wheel in the air with a solemn expression. As soon as the word wheel was formed, the black-clothed, middle-aged elite raised his head to look at the incoming white staff and Howren, who was holding the white staff tightly. A cold, provocative glint appeared in his eyes. Then, his body instantly became illusory and completely disappeared from the Black Tower. Ignoring the black-clothed, middle-aged expert who had disappeared from the Black Tower, Howren looked cautiously at the top of the Black Tower, at the bright red Lin character. This was because he felt a fatal threat from the bright red word Lin. As the white staff heavily smashed into the word Lin, there was no violent sound of impact. Instead, the word Lin formed a black hole that emitted a terrifying suction force and began to forcefully devour the white staff and Howren, who was holding the white staff. Howren, hurry up and let go of the staff magic tool. You must not be sucked into the 18 layers of hell by the law of reincarnation martial skill. Thaling warned when he saw the white staff being forcefully devoured by the black hole formed by the word in. "Thaling, I can't." Howren replied with a slightly panicked expression. The terrifying suction force formed by the word Luin has a very strong adhesive force. I can't let go of the staff magic tool's hand at all. Seeing that the white staff was about to be completely devoured and Howren was about to be devoured, a trace of desperation flashed across Thaling's face. Afterwards, he immediately returned to Victor's body, intending to use a portion of Victor's origin energy that had just been recovered to help Howren escape from the black hole formed by the word in. However, just as he mobilized Victor's origin energy to devour Howren's left hand that was holding the staff magic tool, an even more powerful suction force came from the black hole formed by the word in, instantly swallowing Howren. The feeling of weightlessness caused by the spatial movement caused Howren to temporarily lose consciousness. When he regained consciousness, he unexpectedly found himself in a space that could be called hell. No. When he saw hundreds and thousands of figures being punished by having their tongues pulled out in front of him, he remembered that he had heard his mother talk about the 18 layers of hell when he was young. This made him realize that he had indeed come from hell. The first layer of the 18 layers of hell the hell of having one's tongue pulled out. When he saw Yuhauran, who had just appeared in the space of the first layer of hell, a small ghost with a black head and a black face, which gave off a sinister and terrifying feeling, floated over with a pitch-black iron pincer in its hand. The small ghost was only about 1.2 meters tall, facing Yuhauran, who was 1.8 meters tall. It was obviously unable to perform the punishment of having its tongue pulled out. Therefore, it immediately ordered with a sharp voice, "You lower your head and open your mouth." Even though he had been sent to the legendary 18 layers of hell by the black hole formed by the wordling, it was still much less terrifying and dangerous than the ruins and forbidden areas that he had explored in his previous life. Therefore, after the initial panic, Yuhauran quickly calmed down and immediately checked his body's condition. Other than being unable to connect to the Thaling in his sea of consciousness, everything else was normal. In response to the small ghost's fierce order, he directly mobilized 30% of his elemental energy and reached out to grab the neck of the small ghost, whose cultivation was only at the beginning of first-grade martial grandmaster stage. The weak trace of body temperature caused a glimmer of light to flash in Yuhauran's eyes. His left hand that was tightly gripping the small ghost's neck suddenly tightened, and the struggling small ghost immediately quieted down. His right hand pierced through the small ghost's chest like lightning, and a heart that was still beating appeared in his right hand. Using a living person as a medium to reproduce the scene of the ancient hell, throwing away the small ghost's corpse and heart in his hand, Yuhauran looked at the ghost officers and ghosts in front of him, who were still performing the punishment of having their tongues pulled out, and could not help but confusedly mutter to himself. Throwing away the small ghost's corpse and heart in his hand, Yuhauran looked at the ghost officers and ghosts in front of him, who were still performing the punishment of having their tongues pulled out, and could not help but confusedly mutter to himself. "Xiao Jiufa, what is your true goal?" Taking a deep breath, he forcefully expelled the doubts that had just emerged in his heart. Then, using the method of telepathy, he began to call out to his second doppelganger that was cultivating in the victor. After a full 30 seconds, he finally succeeded in contacting his second doppelganger. "Brother Ran, where's the Thaling?" Yuhauran immediately replied, "Brother Yu, at the moment you were swallowed by the black hole, an extremely mysterious power instantly sealed the victor. Elder Pagoda is currently trying to find a way to break the seal of the mysterious power." The second doppelganger quickly replied. Hearing that the Thaling had only lost contact with him because the main victor was sealed, Yuhauran could not help but let out a long sigh of relief. Chapter 12:37. In the hell of tongue-ripping. "You, open your mouth." A little ghost who had just carried out the tongue-ripping punishment was gasping for breath when he saw Yuhauran standing 1,000 meters away. He immediately floated over with a pitch-black iron pincer. Compared to the little ghost whose neck had been crushed, this little ghost who floated over was nearly 1.6 meters tall. He could use the iron pincer to clamp down on Yuhauran's tongue. Therefore, when he was less than 100 meters away from Yuhauran, the little ghost gave the same order in a shrill voice. Seeing the indifferent gaze of the sinner who had ignored his orders, the little ghost felt that he had been seriously provoked. He immediately increased his floating speed and planned to use the tongue-ripping method to let the other party know how powerful he was. However, when he was 30 meters away from Yuhauran, he unexpectedly saw his companion, who had lost his heart. A trace of panic flashed across his eyes, and he immediately turned to flee. Yuhauran, who had been waiting on the spot for Thaling's reply, saw the panic in the little ghost's eyes and immediately realized that this little ghost's identity was definitely not ordinary. Perhaps he knew something about the hell of tongue-ripping. Therefore, he immediately used the law of speed, which had also reached the great circle and instantly appeared in front of the little ghost. "How dare you kill a ghost servant? According to the law, you should be sent to the 7th level of the Sword Mountain Hell and stay there for 100 years. Seeing Yuhauran appear in front of him in an instant, the little ghost, who was only a 3rd-grade martial great master, knew that he was no match for him. Therefore, after forcing himself to quickly calm down, he took the initiative to threaten him. To be able to calm down so quickly and think of a way to counterattack shows that your mental state cultivation is not bad. After hearing the little ghost's threat, Yu Haoran nodded and praised him. Then, he quickly appeared next to the little ghost and locked his powerful aura on him. Then, he pressed his hand against his head and began to use the soul-searching technique to search his memories. In less than 5 seconds, Yu Haoran had finished looking through all of the other party's memories. He pressed his left hand against the other party's head forcefully and directly shattered the other party's soul. At the same time, he could not help but sigh in disappointment. The other party had very little life experience. He had lived in Yinluo City until he was 16 years old. After he was tested to have the talent to become a martial emperor, he was sent to the first level of hell, where he had his tongue pulled out. Then he began to practice the cultivation method he had obtained in his sleep, the profound, high-grade ghost soul manipulation cultivation method. The reason why his reaction just now was slightly more shrewd than the first brat's was because before he entered the hell of tongue ripping, his personality was already a little strange. At the same time, the young man's temperament often made him doubt the authenticity of the hell of tongue pulling. However, although he didn't understand the specific origin and situation of the hell of tongue ripping from the brat's memories, he knew the entrance to the second level of the hell of scissors. Brother Yu, Elder Pagoda said that he knows too little information and can't deduce Xiao Jiufa's true purpose. Therefore, he hopes that you can explore a few more levels of hell while ensuring your own safety and understand more about hell. Just as Yu Haoran was about to head for the entrance to the second layer of hell, the second avatar communicated with Thaling through telepathy. Got it. Using telepathy to communicate with his second avatar, Yu Haoran began to use the law of speed to increase his speed. However, just as he passed by the punishment square, he immediately attracted the attention of a dozen or so messengers. Among them, a brat with a height of 1 meter and 65 centimeters and a cultivation base at the peak of 3rd grade martial grandmaster floated toward him with a sneer. Stopping abruptly, Yu Haoran looked at a sinner who was being punished by having his tongue pulled out. A thought suddenly flashed through his mind. The speed of the perfected law of speed allowed him to quickly appear in front of the sinner, who seemed like a ghost, but was actually faintly emitting a trace of vitality. A powerful wave of origin energy directly shattered the brat who was being punished in a powder. Yu Haoran reached out with his left hand and pressed it against the sinner's head. The normal body temperature and vigorous vitality made him very certain that the other party was a living person and not a ghost who had fallen into hell. Similarly, in less than 5 seconds, Yu Haoran withdrew his left hand that had used the soul-searching secret technique. Unlike the brat who had been sent to the hell of tongue-pulling hell after reaching adulthood, this person who was being punished now had his memories altered by someone. All that was left was the memory of his crime of stirring up trouble and sowing discord. Although he did not obtain any information about the hell of tongue-pulling hell, Yu Haoran knew from the other party's real situation that he had not been sent to the real 18 levels of hell by the black hole formed by the word Lin. The hell of hell he was currently in was probably the 18-level black tower that he wanted to use his staff technique to destroy. As long as it was not the real 18 levels of hell of legend, there was nothing mysterious or terrifying about it. All that was left was to use his valiant strength to charge out of the black tower floor by floor. Thinking of this, Yu Haoran used his divine thought to lock onto the 1,265 messengers in the hell of tongue-pulling hell and directly destroyed their souls. The entire hell of tongue-pulling hell immediately quieted down. Then, he directly rushed 3,000 meters away. There was a bloodstone that was very similar in shape to a tongue that directly led to the void above his head. He reached out and pressed his hand on the bloodstone, carefully sensing the quality of the bloodstone. Then, he passed on all the details of the bloodstone to Thaling through his second clone. Then, he took out the white staff of the high-grade venerable realm, stepped on the bloodstone, and walked toward the second level of the hell of scissors. Compared to the messengers who were being punished in the hell of tongue-pulling hell and the sinners who were being punished, the number of messengers and sinners in the Hell of Scissors was obviously lower. However, the messengers in the Hell of Scissors were obviously much stronger. Of course, that was only in comparison. Using the speed of the perfected law of speed, Howard instantly arrived in front of a messenger who had just used a pair of black scissors to cut off a woman's fingers. His powerful aura locked onto the other party, and his left hand pressed on the other party's head began to use the soul-searching secret technique. Although the soul-searching secret technique this time was slightly longer than the messengers in the first level of Hell by 2 seconds, other than learning the entrance to the third level of the Hell of Iron Tree, there was no valuable information. After using his divine thought to lock onto and destroy the souls of 937 messengers in an instant, Howard instantly rushed in front of a huge blood-red pair of iron scissors. Chapter 1238. In the space of the Hell of the Iron Tree. After entering the space of the Hell of the Iron Tree through the blood scissors, Howard was immediately attracted by the iron tree in front of him that was about 100 meters tall. Its branches were all made of sharp blades. Seeing the martial king ghost servant throw the sinner high into the air, the sharp blades on the iron tree immediately emitted a suction force and directly pierced the sinner's back. Then, the sinner was hung on the iron tree alive. What really attracted Howard's attention was the suction force emitted by the iron tree's sharp blades. It was exactly the same as the suction force produced by the black hole formed by the black hole written by the magistrate brush. In a flash, he appeared in front of the iron tree. A terrifying aura directly shattered the several hundred ghost servants that surrounded him. Howard extended his hand and grabbed a sharp blade. He wanted to forcibly pull it out and carefully examine how the sharp blade created that special suction force. But the result was that the sharp blade did not move at all. He directly activated the physical strength of the ancestral witch body. Then he mobilized all of his origin power and soul power and continued to use all of his strength to pull the sharp blade. Fortunately, the sharp blade that he was holding moved bit by bit and was finally successfully pulled out. The sharp blade was stuck on the iron tree. Under the influence of the iron tree, only the sharp side of the blade was revealed. But after truly pulling it out of the iron tree, Howard shockingly discovered that the sharp blade in his hand was actually a top-grade Sage Realm magic tool. However, what made him feel slightly disappointed was that the sharp blade that was pulled out of the iron tree had lost its special suction force. Shaking his head, Howard dispelled the disappointment that had just emerged in his heart. After putting away the sharp blade in his hand, he continued to use all of his strength and pulled out 2 more sharp blades in succession. The result was exactly the same as the first sharp blade. They were both top-grade Sage Realm magic tools. However, they also lost their special suction force. Walking around the iron tree, the shock on Howard's face was replaced by doubt, because the number of sharp blades on the iron tree had actually reached 999. For Xiao Jiufa, who was a loose cultivator, he did not have the ability to collect and create so many top-grade Sage Realm magic tools. Could it be that the owner of the Black Tower was not Xiao Jiufa? At the same time, Howard suddenly recalled that when he was attacking the Black Tower, the black-clothed middle-aged expert who had shouted at him had said that his surname was Chui and not Xiao. This made him have a vague guess in his heart. The mastermind who controlled the entire Yama City and built the 18-story Black Tower was most likely the power behind the black and white law enforcers of the law enforcement peak. If the truth was as he guessed, it would be difficult to kill Xiao Jiufa today. After all, in his previous life, he had lived in that faction for a period of time, so he knew how mysterious and powerful that faction was. Brother Yu, the Pagoda Elder, wants you to put away the magic tools used by the envoys of hell. Just when Howard was worried about whether he could successfully kill Xiao Jiufa, Thaling's second doppelganger warned him. Got it, Howard replied, using the method of telepathy. He then took a deep breath and continued to dispel the hesitation in his heart. Then, he raised his head to look at the 100-meter-tall iron tree and considered how to put the iron tree into his storage ring. As for the iron pincers and scissors, he had already put them away when he used his divine sense to kill the envoy's souls. He walked to the base of the iron tree and held the two sharp blades with both hands. Then he lifted the iron tree with force. The difficulty he imagined did not appear. The iron tree was gently uprooted by him, causing him to be completely stunned for a moment. After all, he had used all of his strength just now to barely pull out the sharp blades from the iron tree. How could the iron tree, which was full of sharp blades, be so light and have such a weak connection to the space of hell? Fortunately, his powerful mental state cultivation allowed him to quickly recover his calm. Then, he used his divine sense to put the 100-meter-tall iron tree into a storage ring and immediately entered the fourth layer of hell, the hell of mirrors of retribution. As soon as he entered the space of the hell of mirrors of retribution, a white light immediately shone on his body. Then, Howren's image appeared in a 100-meter-tall bronze mirror in the center of the space of hell. However, the bronze mirror that was supposed to show Howren's life experiences and the sins he had committed in his life did not move at all. Howren's image in the mirror was motionless. Ignoring his image in the bronze mirror, Howren used his divine sense to quickly scan the space of hell. He did not find any envoys carrying out their punishments, nor did he see any sinners receiving their punishments. Recalling the legends of the hell of mirrors of retribution, Howren immediately understood why there were no envoys or sinners in hell. That was because the hell of mirrors of retribution only showed a person's sins in their life. Then, based on the severity of their sins, they would automatically be sent to different hell to receive their punishments. In a flash, he appeared in front of the bronze mirror. His powerful divine sense immediately put the bronze mirror into his storage ring. Then, he entered the fifth layer of hell through the blood-red stone mirror, the hell of steamers. In the following period of time, Howren consecutively passed through the fifth layer of hell, the hell of steamers, the sixth layer of hell of bronze pillars, the seventh layer of hell of knife mountain, the eighth layer of hell of ice mountain, and the ninth layer of hell of frying pan. In the end, the fifth layer of hell was exactly the same as the fourth layer of the hell of mirrors of retribution. Apart from the torture tools used to punish sinners, there were no envoys or sinners. More importantly, the hell of frying pan did not directly lead to the 10th layer of hell. This caused Howren, who had just put away the hell of frying pan, to fall into a dilemma. Helpless, he could only ask for help from Thaling through his second clone. Brother Elder Thaling, said that in the memories of the ancient 12 ancestral shamans, there's an ancestral shaman secret technique that can tear through the void and traverse thousands of miles. After only 5 seconds, the second clone began to relay the method given by Thaling. Elder Thaling wants you to use this secret technique to tear through the void above the hell of frying pan. See if you can enter the 10th layer of hell, the hell of cow pit, or directly leave the 18th layer of hell. Howren immediately sat cross-legged on the ground and began to read the ancient ancestral shaman's memories that were sealed in the depths of his mind. Fortunately, his luck was not bad. In less than 10 minutes, he successfully obtained the secret technique to tear through the void. After carefully reading the ancestral shaman's secret technique, Howren was delighted to discover that the secret technique to tear through the void was not complicated. As long as one's cultivation reached the martial sage realm and then used the power in the ancestral shaman's bloodline, one could easily use the secret technique to tear through the void. After a simple cultivation of the secret technique, Howren immediately stopped and stood up. Then, he activated the bloodline power in the ancestral shaman's body and circulated the secret technique's power in his palm. Then, he gently slashed at the void above his head. The void of the 9th layer of hell of frying pan was cut open. Chapter 1239. In Yenluo City. Just as Howren was sucked into the black hole formed by the word wheel, the black-robed man, surnamed Shui, reappeared at the top of the black tower. Brother Shui, you were too reckless. Along with the voice of criticism, Another black-clothed, middle-aged elite appeared at the peak of the Black Tower. We've only refined 9 levels of the artifacts of the Black Tower's 18 levels of hell, and we've only completed 3 levels of the Law of Reincarnation. They don't have strong offensive and defensive power, and they can't be damaged. Brother Chui, you took the risk of sending that young man into the Black Tower's hell. If he destroys the first 9 levels of hell that we've worked so hard to create, how are we going to explain it to the king? Brother Xiao, the magistrate's brush is too profound. I can't control the law of reincarnation that the artifact spirit instinctively uses. Faced with the black-robed man's accusation, the middle-aged man, surnamed Chui, smiled bitterly. If the king blames me, I'm willing to bear it alone. I definitely won't implicate Brother Xiao. Sigh. Hearing the middle-aged man surnamed Chui's explanation and guarantee, the middle-aged man surnamed Xiao couldn't help but sigh. As the person in charge of the construction of the Black Tower's 18 levels of hell, he had followed the king for a long time and knew the king's personality and methods very well. If something happened to the Black Tower's hell, which had consumed a lot of resources to create, the middle-aged man surnamed Chui would definitely have to bear the main responsibility. As the person in charge, he definitely wouldn't be able to escape. Moreover, according to the king's punishment for subordinates who made mistakes, a mountain of knives, a sea of flames, and a pool of blood were considered light punishments. It wasn't impossible for one's soul to scatter and never be reincarnated. Not good. Just as Yuhaoran used his divine sense to kill all the ghost servants in the hell of tongue-ripping hell and took away all the iron pincers, the middle-aged man surnamed Xiao, who had a close relationship with the Black Tower, suddenly spoke to the middle-aged man surnamed Chui. Brother Chui, something happened in the hell of tongue-ripping hell. Hearing the middle-aged man surnamed Zhao's warning, the middle-aged man surnamed Chui couldn't help but change his expression and ask anxiously, Brother Xiao, can you use the magistrate's brush to send me into the hell of Black Tower? Yes. The middle-aged man nodded, but immediately shook his head and refused. Brother Chui, you're no match for that young man. Now that you've entered the Black Tower's hell space, other than throwing away your life, you won't be able to solve any problems. Brother Xiao, what should we do now? When a middle-aged man thought of the stick martial skill that the young man had used, which was as powerful as an early-stage 6th grade martial saint, the middle-aged man surnamed Chui did not continue to show off. But if he wanted the king to punish his subordinates who made mistakes, he couldn't help but ask in a panic. Brother Chui, don't worry. Perhaps the young man you sent into the Black Tower's hell is not only a life-saving jade token for us to avoid punishment, but he might also be the key to whether or not we can enter the inner palace. The middle-aged man with the surname Xiao comforted with a smile. Brother Xiao, I don't understand. Originally, they were worried that the young people who entered the Black Tower's hell would destroy the 18 layers of hell that they had secretly built for decades. Afterwards, they would be punished by the king. Now, he was happily expressing that this young man was the key to whether they would be able to enter the inner hall. The change in attitude of the middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao left the expert with the surname Chui completely confused. Brother Chui, do you know who the young man you just sent into the Black Tower's hell is? The middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao asked with a smile. I don't know. The middle-aged expert with the surname Chui thought carefully and shook his head. He's not even 20 years old, and he's good at using stick martial skills. His body looks thin and weak, but he has a very strong physical strength. The middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao reminded with a smile. Although his cultivation is not high, he has the strength to challenge a surpassing stage. Who in the entire southern region meets these conditions? The prince consort of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom. He has the #1 talent in alchemy in the Tianxin continent. He can refine the supreme Huazuan pill and the 7 lives mysterious gate pill. He's Yuhaoran. In the entire southern region, the number of young people who could meet the conditions mentioned by the middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao was too few. There was no need to think at all to know who this person was. Therefore, the expert with the surname Chui immediately guessed who the young man he sent into the Black Tower's hell was. That's right. As he nodded to confirm, the middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao asked with a smile, "Brother Chui, if we can capture Yu Haoran alive and send him to the king, do you think the king will continue to pursue the mistakes that happened in the Black Tower's hell?" "Of course not," the expert with the surname Chui replied with a smile on his face. "If Yu Haoran obediently refines a large number of supreme Huazuan pills and 7 lives mysterious gate pills for the king and completes countless plans for the king, as meritorious subjects, will we have a chance to enter the inner hall?" The middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao continued to ask with a smile. "Of course there will be a chance." The middle-aged expert with the surname Chui nodded quickly, and the smile on his face became even brighter. However, the bright smile did not last for long before it was replaced by hesitation. "Brother Xiao, you and I are only at the early 3rd grade martial revered stage. The top grade Emperor Realm Magistrate Brush can only play a defensive role. How can we capture Yu Haoran alive, who could display the strength of an early 6th grade martial revered stage staff technique? Brother Chui, this will require us to make the final choice." The corners of the middle-aged man's mouth curled up slightly as he looked at the cultivators and commoners in Yin Luo City with a chilling gaze. "Brother Xiao, could it be that you want to use the millions of people in Yin Luo City to perform the blood sacrifice technique in exchange for the strength of a peak 7th grade martial revered stage?" After seeing the cold gaze of the middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao, the middle-aged expert with the surname Chui's heart trembled slightly, and his tone was somewhat unbearable. "That's right." The middle-aged expert with the surname Xiao nodded and withdrew his cold gaze. He looked directly at the middle-aged expert with the surname Chui and said, "Brother Chui, how many powerful experts and experts are there in Yin Luo City, and how many ordinary people are there with vigorous vitality? As the person in charge of the city's affairs, you should know very well. I can't bear all the blood energy condensed by the blood sacrifice technique alone, so I need you to share a part of the blood energy and help me capture Yu Haoran as soon as possible." "Brother Xiao, don't you have any other way?" Not only did he have to perform the blood sacrifice technique, but he also had to bear the blood energy extracted by the blood sacrifice technique. The middle-aged expert with the surname Chui asked with more resistance in his heart. "Brother Chui, I, Xiao Jiufa, am not a cold-blooded and ruthless person, nor am I a bloodthirsty demon. I don't want to sacrifice the millions of people in Yin Luo City." Feeling the instinctive resistance of the middle-aged expert with the surname Chui, Xiao Jiufa was worried that he would stop him from performing the blood sacrifice technique and ruin the plan he had just made. He hurriedly put on a pitiful and pained expression and said, "But you know very well how the king punishes subordinates. I don't want to experience the punishment of a mountain of blades, a sea of flames, or a blood pool. I also don't want to lose the chance to reincarnate." Chapter 1240. Inside Yama City. When he heard Xiao Jufam mention the Blade Mountain Flame Sea and the Blood Pool torture, the middle-aged man could not help but tremble. A trace of fear appeared in his eyes. When he heard Xiao Jufam mention that he did not even have the chance to reincarnate, his face turned as pale as paper. The resistance in his heart was gradually replaced by fear. "Not good, Brother Chui." Yu Haoran suddenly increased the speed of the tower. He has already rushed to the 7th floor of the Blade Mountain Hell. After working together for nearly 30 years to build the Black Pagoda's 18 levels of hell, Xiao Jiufa was too familiar with the middle-aged man's hesitant personality. He also knew how to force him to change his mind and finally agree to the blood sacrifice of millions of lives in Yama City. Therefore, when he saw the fear in the middle-aged man's eyes, he continued to exert pressure that crushed the last trace of conscience in his heart. "Oh!" He took a deep breath and then slowly exhaled. The fear in the middle-aged man's eyes was replaced by coldness. Then he slowly floated to the top of the Black Pagoda. Then he took out 9 pill bottles from his storage ring and used his divine sense to control the 9 pill bottles to fly to different corners of Yama City. The corners of Xiao Jiufa's mouth rose slightly. He walked to the middle of the top of the pagoda, and a trace of a smile appeared in his eyes. Bang! As the 9 pill bottles are shattered one by his divine sense, the essence and blood stored in the pill bottles quickly merged into the ground. Soon, one after another, an evil aura appeared in the entire Yama City. The evil aura of the formation was like a drawing of blood. It caused thousands of experts in the martial ancestor realm and above to soar into the sky and desperately escape Yama City. Unfortunately, just as a third tribulation quasi-martial venerable expert was about to rush out of Yama City, an evil aura of the formation crossed the barrier of space and time and quickly merged into his body. In less than half a second, the formation swallowed the soul in his sea of consciousness. As he lost consciousness, his corpse floated directly to the Black Pagoda. The fate of the third tribulation quasi-martial venerable expert quickly spread to other quasi-martial venerables who wanted to escape Yama City. Chui Jihao, what are you trying to do? A second tribulation quasi-martial venerable expert who had comprehended the law of speed to perfection asked sternly when he saw the middle-aged man with the surname Chui, who was floating above the Black Tower and continuously creating seals. He relied on his lightning-fast speed to dodge the formations that were constantly approaching him. Chui Jihao coldly glanced at the other party and did not say anything. He slowly closed his eyes and increased the speed of the hand seals. Bang! Bang! After the first third tribulation quasi-martial honorable exploded, the bodies of countless powerhouses floating around the Black Tower also began to explode one after another. The bloody mist formed by the explosion of his body gradually gathered at the center of the Black Tower, where an altar exuding an even more evil aura was located. At this moment, Xiao Jiufa was standing on the altar. As more and more blood mist fused into the altar, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation began to rise rapidly. Soon, he broke through the middle, high and peak of 3rd grade martial venerable, and then smoothly advanced to 4th grade martial venerable. When the bloody mist formed by the explosion of millions of civilians in Yama City also fused into the altar, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation not only successfully broke through to 8th grade martial venerable, but it still showed no signs of slowing down. Chui Jihao stopped performing the blood sacrifice spell and slowly opened his eyes. When he saw that Xiao Jiufa's cultivation had far exceeded the realm he had told him about, he suddenly had a bad feeling in his heart. After secretly using a special crystal to record the scene of Xiao Jiufa using the blood sacrifice spell to increase his cultivation, Chui Jihao quietly took out the judge pen and an escape talisman. Break for me. When his cultivation advanced to the peak of 8th grade martial venerable, Xiao Jiufa felt powerless. He knew that the blood sacrifice spell had reached its limit in terms of increasing his strength. However, he knew that with his cultivation at the peak of 8th grade martial venerable, he would not be able to smoothly complete his plot. Looking up at the bloody mist that was still fused into the altar, Xiao Jiufa directly performed the incomplete, devouring secret technique of the demonic Tao. As he forcibly absorbed more of the bloody mist, he roared to the sky. Boom! Accompanied by an incomparably powerful aura, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation broke through to the early 9th grade martial venerable. Feeling the powerful surging power in his body, Xiao Jiudao could not help but look up at Chui Jihao proudly. Brother Xiao, congratulations. Holding the judge pen in his sleeve, Chui Jihao reluctantly squeezed out a smile and congratulated him. I didn't expect that the blood energy transformed by the blood sacrifice spell would allow Brother Zhao's cultivation to directly advance to the early 9th grade martial venerable. GAGA. Facing Chui Jihao's congratulations, Xiao Jiufa rose into the air and let out a strange laugh. Brother Xiao, what are you doing? Chui Jihao raised the judge pen and asked sternly, clearly feeling the strong, murderous aura emitted from Xiao Jiufa's body. After seeing the judge pen in Chui Jihao's hand, Xiao Jiufa's eyes revealed a strong greed. Give me the judge pen. Xiao Jiufa stretched out his slightly withered left hand and roared in a hoarse voice. Brother Xiao, Your mind is now controlled by countless resentment. Quickly disperse a part of the blood energy and maintain your cultivation at the peak of 7th grade martial venerable. After seeing Xiao Jiufa's withered left hand and his hoarse voice, Cui Jihao finally knew why Xiao Jiufa had such a strong murderous aura towards him and quickly reminded him in a loud voice. Ga. Facing Cui Jihao's reminder, Xiao Jiufa laughed twice and suddenly disappeared. Guard! Seeing Xiao Jiufa suddenly disappear, Cui Jihao did not hesitate and immediately waved the judge pen in his hand and wrote a big word, guard. Unfortunately, just as he was about to write the last bit of the word, Xiao Jiufa, who instantly appeared beside Cui Jihao, not only interrupted his action of continuing to write, his left hand, as fast as lightning, directly penetrated his chest and took away his heart. For a peerless expert of the martial venerable realm, although losing the heart would not kill him, it would affect his strength. Cui Jihao's right hand held the wound where he lost his heart and looked at Xiao Jiufa with a crazy look in his eyes. Xiao Jiufa, I will not rest until you die. Seeing Xiao Jiufa directly swallow his heart, Cui Jihao, whose reason was instantly replaced by madness, directly overdrew all of his yuan power and soul power, intending to use the judge pen's forbidden secret technique. However, a trace of black gas suddenly emerged from the wound where he lost his heart. Chapter 1241. In Yanluo City, when Cui Jihao sensed the powerful corrosion of the black gas on his spirit, he quickly calmed down from his madness, and a trace of understanding flashed through his mind. He looked at Xiao Jiufa with a trace of admiration and hatred in his eyes, especially when he saw the madness in Xiao Jiufa's eyes gradually being replaced by calmness and reaching out to seize the magistrate's brush. Cui Jihao, whose hatred quickly gained the upper hand, used his remaining trace of consciousness to mobilize all his yuan qi into the magistrate's brush and directly threw it to the east. Cui Jihao, you want the sleeping magistrate's brush to instinctively return to his majesty's side? Dream on. Xiao Jiufa sneered disdainfully when he saw Cui Jihao throw the magistrate's brush to the east before his death. Then, when he was about to chase after the magistrate's brush, a crack suddenly appeared in the void in front of the magistrate's brush. Then, a young man with a look of surprise on his face immediately put away the magistrate's brush in ecstasy. Using the method of tearing the void to achieve long-distance movement was different from using transmission talismans and teleportation formations. The transmission talisman's teleportation was random, and you didn't know where you would be teleported to. The transmission formation's teleportation was directional and needed to be set up at the starting point, as well as the receiving formation at the ending point. Although the distance and speed of transmission by tearing the void couldn't be compared to that of transmission talismans and teleportation formations, it could achieve an accurate positioning. Because he didn't know if the secret method of tearing the void would be affected by the 18 levels of hell of the Black Tower, Yu Haoran chose to directly enter Yanluo City and observe the position of the Black Tower. But what he never expected was that when he used the secret method of tearing the void to escape from the 18 levels of hell and return to the familiar Yanluo City, he suddenly suffered a sneak attack from the magistrate's brush. Fortunately, when he stepped into the crack in the void, the mysterious power that sealed Victor suddenly disappeared, allowing him to reconnect with the Thaling. Therefore, when he discovered that the magistrate's brush had ambushed him and was about to use all his strength to counterattack, the Thaling that appeared in his sea of consciousness immediately reminded him, Yu Haoran, the magistrate brush didn't ambush you. Instead, it relied on its artifact's spirit instincts to return to its master's side. After the reminder, he immediately mobilized a portion of the Victor's origin energy and combined it with all of his divine sense to forcefully take in the magistrate's pen and suppress it within the Victor. Seeing that Thaling had successfully taken away the magistrate's pen, Yu Haoran immediately asked ecstatically, Thaling, what grade is the magistrate's brush? If it hadn't been damaged, it would have been a top-notch divine artifact. Now, it's only at the level of a supreme emperor. Thowling replied in surprise as he carefully examined the magistrate's pen that Victor had suppressed. Although the magistrate's brush was not a magic tool that existed at the beginning of the world, it was still a famous divine tool of punishment in ancient times. Moreover, it had a certain relationship with him. Sizzle. After hearing the tower's spirit's reply, Yuhauran sucked in a breath of cold air. At the same time, his heart was filled with even more ecstasy. Thowling, can I use the magistrate's brush? Yes now, but I can't say for sure in the future. Thowling gave an ambiguous answer. However, he didn't wait for Yuhauran to ask and took the initiative to explain. Yuhauran, the magistrate's pen's artifact spirit is still in a severely injured and unconscious state. With my Victor suppression and guidance, I can make the artifact spirit submit to you temporarily. But when the artifact spirit of the magistrate's pen is truly awakened, whether it can continue to be used by you depends on your own ability and the artifact spirit's choice. After all, the two sides had a very deep relationship. Thowling didn't really want to hurt or bind the artifact spirit of the magistrate's pen. Therefore, he hoped that Yuhauran could rely on his own ability and charm to capture the artifact spirit of the magistrate's pen and to follow him. After hearing Thowling's explanation, Yuhauran nodded in surprise. It's good that it can be used by me now. In the future, when I'm stronger, I might not be interested in a magic tool of this grade. You, hand over the magistrate's pen quickly. Just when Yuhauran wanted to ask Thowling to take out the magistrate's pen and carefully examine the magistrate's pen's mystery, he suddenly heard an exasperated yell. Putting away the thought of immediately examining the magistrate's pen, Yuhauran looked up and his face instantly turned gloomy. In front of him, apart from Xiao Jiufa, who looked somewhat similar to Xiao Zhongyan but younger, there was also the blood-red altar at the top of the Black Tower. In his previous life, Yuhauran had seen similar red altars more than 10 times, so he knew that this was the altar used to perform the blood sacrifice technique. Moreover, from the color of the altar and the smell of blood that remained in the air, he knew that the blood sacrifice technique had just completed the sacrificial process. In other words, the millions of living beings in the entire Yama city had all been sacrificed. Of course, the reason that really made Yuhauran's face turn gloomy was not the millions of living beings in Yama city that had been sacrificed, but Xiao Jiufa, who had obtained a higher cultivation and strength through the sacrifice of millions of living beings. At this moment, Xiao Jiufa, who had fallen into a violent rage, was emitting a terrifying aura that had reached the early stage of a 9th-grade martial venerable. Thowling, if you use the possession technique and control the body, can you defeat Xiao Jiufa, who has obtained a stronger strength through the sacrifice of millions of living beings? Pointing at Xiao Jiufa, who was rushing over, Yuhauran quickly asked for help. After all, with his current cultivation, even if he used all his strength and means, he could only display the strength of a peak 7th-grade martial venerable at most. He was no match for Xiao Jiufa, who was at the early stage of a 9th-grade martial venerable. Yuhauran, you don't need to panic now, and you don't need me to use the prince's possession technique to help you. In the face of Yuhauran's request for help, Thowling was not nervous at all and reminded him with a smile. Next, you only need to use a secret technique. Not only will you be able to easily defeat Xiao Jiufa, but your body's grade, origin power, and soul power will also successfully break through to the martial venerable realm. After hearing Thowling's explanation, Yuhauran, who quickly calmed down, asked in surprise, Thowling, which secret technique? The complete version of the devouring technique. Thowling gave the answer directly. Although Yuhauran wanted to know the reason why the complete version of the devouring technique could defeat Xiao Jiufa, he could only temporarily suppress his inner thoughts in the face of Xiao Jiufa, who was already in front of him, and then directly use the complete version of the devouring technique. Yuhauran, as long as you hand over the judge pen now, I promise I won't hurt you. Xiao Jiufa suddenly stopped when he was 10 meters away from Yuhauran. He seemed to be very kind, but in fact, he just wanted to capture him alive. Chapter 1242. In Yinluo City, Yu Haoran ignored Xiao Jiufa's seemingly kind request, but in fact, it was filled with evil intentions. After Yu Haoran growled, two powerful suction forces gradually formed from his palms. Yu Haoran, how did you master the complete version of the devouring technique? Just as the two suction forces appeared from Yu Haoran's palms, Xiao Jiufa suddenly found that he could not control the blood energy in his body through the blood sacrifice, nor could he control his body to passively approach Yu Haoran. Facing this strange and familiar phenomenon, and thinking of the secret technique that Yu Haoran had just shouted, Xiao Jiufa could not help but ask in horror. Ignoring Xiao Jiufa's question, Yu Haoran was pleasantly surprised after seeing that the devouring technique was indeed effective. He directly used all his strength to continue to increase the power of the devouring technique. Soon, Xiao Jiufa was in front of him, and then he pressed his palms on his chest. Then, an indescribably huge amount of pure energy quickly poured into Xiao Jiufa's body. In just 5 seconds, his physical body successfully reached the peak of the 9th grade martial saint. Then, the Yuan power in his Dantian and the soul in his sea of consciousness all reached the peak of the 9th grade martial saint. Yu Haoran, stop right now. Feeling that the pure blood energy in his body was quickly flowing away, and his cultivation soon fell to the peak of the 8th grade martial saint, Xiao Jiufa shouted with a ferocious expression. At the same time, he also hurriedly used a secret technique of the demonic path, trying to get rid of Yu Haoran's control. But the result was no use. When Yu Haoran's physical body successfully advanced to the martial saint realm, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation fell to the early 8th grade martial saint realm. When Yu Haoran's Yuan power smoothly advanced to the martial saint realm, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation fell to the peak of the 6th grade martial saint realm. When Yu Haoran's soul power smoothly advanced to the martial saint realm, Xiao Jiufa's cultivation fell to the early 4th grade martial saint realm. His mental state, cultivation, physical body grade, origin power, and soul power had all broken through to the martial honorable realm. All he needed to do now was to continue comprehending the power of the laws and reach the level where he could control the laws. Then, his cultivation would be able to break through to the martial honorable realm. Breakthroughs in the power of laws required personal comprehension, the accumulation of time, and certain opportunities. As a result, the remaining pure energy in Xiao Jiufa's body could no longer increase his strength. However, Yu Haoran did not stop the great devouring technique. Instead, he directly summoned the second doppelganger inside Victor. Taking advantage of the fact that they shared the same origin, he used the pure energy he devoured to improve the cultivation and strength of the second doppelganger. Seeing that his cultivation had fallen to the early 3rd grade martial revered realm, Yu Haoran still did not intend to let him go. Xiao Jiufa felt extremely frightened and could not help but beg bitterly. Emperor's son-in-law, it was Cui Zhihao who used the law of reincarnation contained in the magistrate's brush to send you to the Black Tower's 18 levels of hell. It has nothing to do with me, Xiao Jiufa. So please let me go. Coldly glancing at Xiao Jiufa, Yu Haoran closed his eyes and continued to use the great devouring technique to absorb the pure energy in Xiao Jiufa's body. Emperor's son-in-law, as long as you let me go, I will tell you a secret related to the 18 levels of hell in ancient times. Seeing that Yu Haoran ignored his pleas and continued to devour the pure energy in his body, a cold light flashed in Xiao Jiufa's eyes. However, when he discovered that his cultivation had fallen to the early 1st grade martial honorable realm, the cold light was immediately replaced by fear. He wanted to use his biggest secret to exchange for a chance of survival. After opening his eyes, Yu Haoran only said 3 words, which caused Xiao Jiufa's mental defenses to completely collapse. He allowed Yu Haoran to absorb the remaining energy in his body. King of Hell's Palace. The great devouring technique could not only devour all the energy from a living being's cultivation, but also the energy contained in the flesh and blood. especially for a peerless expert in a martial honorable realm like Xiao Jiufa. The huge amount of energy contained in his body could directly turn an ordinary person into a peak ninth-grade martial saint. Therefore, after the Yuan energy in Xiao Jiufa's dantian and the soul in his sea of consciousness were completely sucked dry, Yu Haoran still did not stop the great devouring technique. Fortunately, he still remembered that he needed to keep Xiao Jiufa's head so that he could completely destroy the mental defenses of Xiao Zhongyuan and the others. Then, he could accompany them to watch a show of betrayal. After shattering the body that had been sucked dry and putting away the fresh head, Yu Haoran looked at the 18 levels of Black Tower that was about 99 meters high. Fouling, I've already taken away all the artifacts in the first 9 levels of hell. I'm afraid that the latter 9 levels of hell have not been completed yet. In other words, this Black Tower in front of us has already been completely destroyed. What do you want it for? Faced with Yu Haoran's interrogation, Fouling suddenly left the sea of consciousness and floated beside Yu Haoran, explaining with a complicated expression. Yu Haoran, actually, this Black Tower in front of us is not simple at all. Not to mention that the material used to forge it is the Genesis black gold that can be used to forge artifacts on my level. Just the endless space between each level of the Black Tower is related to the fusion of 99 different laws. After hearing that the Genesis black gold used to forge the Black Tower was actually a top artifact forging material that could be used to forge Victor, Yu Haoran was shocked. He also wanted to know what Fouling wanted to do with the Black Tower. I want to continue forging the 18 levels of hell from ancient times. Turning his head to look at Yu Haoran, Fouling said with a solemn expression, Fouling, what are your intentions? Yu Haoran asked with a gloomy expression as he thought of the living ghost servants and sinners that he had just experienced in the first 3 levels of hell. To help you and me win some merit, a merit that can allow us to obtain the protection of the heavenly Tao and avoid countless disasters. Faced with Yu Haoran's question, Fouling took a deep breath and said with a hint of sadness in his tone, Fouling, can you explain in more detail? The pagoda spirit's intentions in creating the ancient 18 levels of hell, as well as the sad tone of its explanation, caused Yu Haoran to have a bad feeling. He quickly asked. Fouling only shook his head in response and flew directly to the 18 levels of the Black Tower. Seeing Fouling fly towards the Black Lotus, Yu Haoran immediately followed and roared with a fierce expression. Fouling, I will do my best to help you forge the 18 levels of hell from ancient times and will not ask you why you are doing this. However, I want to tell you something. I, Yu Haoran, will definitely not let you do anything that will harm yourself, even if I have to pay with my own life. Fouling suddenly stopped in his tracks and felt his chest tighten. There was a special emotion that he wanted to vent out. However, he knew very well that he could not vent it out. Otherwise, with Yu Haoran's shrewdness, he would definitely be able to find clues. Chapter 1243. Yanluo City. Yu Haoran shook his head in disappointment when he saw that Fouling was still unwilling to explain the true reason behind the creation of the ancient 18 levels of hell. However, he kept his promise and did not continue to ask. Instead, he sped up and followed after him. However, when he was less than 50 meters away from the Black Tower, he unexpectedly saw the corpse of Cui Zhihao lying at the bottom of the Black Tower. He had once used the power of the law of reincarnation to send him to the 18 levels of hell. Fouling, wait a moment. After reminding Fouling, who was already standing at the top of the Black Tower, Yu Haoran directly landed beside Cui Zhihao's corpse. His attention was immediately attracted by a trace of black gas at the wound where Cui Zhihao had lost his heart. Spirit, devouring soul. Yu Haoran immediately recognized the origin of the black gas from the familiar aura fluctuation. He immediately took out a pill bottle from his storage ring and used a special method to extract the spirit-devouring soul poison from Cui Zhihao's corpse. When Yu Haoran was about to turn and leave, he suddenly noticed an extremely rare memory crystal under his palm. He bent down and picked up the sparkling and translucent memory crystal. After infusing it with Yuan Li, a clear image immediately appeared in the memory crystal. After seeing the contents of the image, he could not help but reveal a trace of a smile on his face. Withdrawing the Yuan Li that he had infused into the memory crystal, he then placed the memory crystal beside Xiao Jiufa's head. Yu Haoran soared into the air and landed on the top of the Black Tower. Thowling, do it! After seeing that Thowling had removed the blood-colored altar used to set up the blood sacrifice ritual, Yu Haoran solemnly reminded him. Nodding, Thowling returned to the space in his sea of consciousness. Then, using his powerful consciousness, he collected all the soil of the Black Tower's foundation into the victor. Xianyang City, inside the Hall of Rites. Nearly 5 hours had passed since Yu Haoran left the Hall of Rites. Xiao Zhong'an, who had been frowning all this time, had already regained his original arrogant demeanor. From time to time, a hint of provocation flashed through his eyes as he looked at Emperor Qin. The faces of the Confucians standing behind him became rosy again, and they began to loudly discuss when and where to kill Yu Haoran, as well as Yu Haoran's relatives who were related to him by blood. As for Meng Zhengkai, Prince Yifeng, and the others, their eyes were filled with worry. From time to time, they would raise their heads to look at Emperor Qin, who was sitting on the dragon throne. Fortunately, Emperor Qin didn't reveal any worry on his face because Yu Haoran hadn't returned for a long time. This allowed Meng Zhengkai, Prince Yifeng, and the others to endure the discussion of the Confucians. After nearly half an hour, when Xiao Zhongyuan felt that it was impossible for Yu Haoran to return alive, he raised his head to look at Emperor Qin, who was sitting on the dragon throne. When he was about to open his mouth to say something, he suddenly heard an apologetic voice. "I'm really sorry. Something happened at the last minute and delayed me a little, causing me to come back a little late." After hearing the familiar apologetic voice, Xiao Zhongyuan and the other Confucians' faces instantly turned pale. Meng Zhengkai and Prince Yifeng's eyes immediately surged with surprise. Emperor Qin, who seemed to be calm, directly stood up and looked at the entrance of the hall with excitement. With a faint smile on his face, Yu Haoran leisurely walked into the hall. "Prince Consort, how is it?" the impatient Meng Zhengkai immediately asked. After glancing at the pale Xiao Zhongyuan and the other Confucians, Yu Haoran took out Xiao Jiufa's head from his storage ring and threw it to Meng Zhengkai. "Your Majesty, this is indeed Xiao Jiufa's head." After receiving the head thrown by Yu Haoran, Meng Zhengkai carefully looked at it 3 times. Then, he confirmed it with Emperor Qin with a face full of surprise. After receiving Meng Zhengkai's confirmation, Emperor Qin felt a sense of relief. He felt that his state of mind, origin energy, soul, and power of law were about to be sublimated. However, due to the limitations of his physical body, he was unable to successfully complete the sublimation process. "Congratulations, Your Majesty. Congratulations, Your Majesty. You are about to advance to martial honor and become the first peerless emperor in the Tianxin continent." As someone who had successfully broken through to martial honor in terms of state of mind, body, origin energy, and soul, Yu Haoran understood the change in Emperor Qin's aura very well. He knew that it was a sign that he was about to break through to martial honor. While he was sincerely happy for him, he also hurried forward to congratulate him. "God bless our great Emperor Qin Kingdom." After hearing Yu Haoran's congratulations, Meng Zhengkai and the others did not react for a moment. However, the loyal steward Jiang immediately shouted loudly, "Congratulations, Your Majesty. You are about to become an emperor. You will forever protect the foundation of our great Emperor Qin Kingdom. Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!" After hearing Steward Jiang shout and congratulations, Meng Zhengkai and the others immediately reacted. As they kneeled and congratulated him, they could not help but feel a sense of bitterness in their hearts. After all, their cultivation and strength were not much different from each other. They could form a balance between each other. However, as Emperor Qin was about to become a peerless martial honor, the structure of the great Emperor Qin Kingdom's interests would probably change dramatically. After hearing Yu Haoran's congratulations, Emperor Qin finally understood what had happened to him just now. He could not help but laugh happily. After laughing for nearly 30 seconds, he stopped laughing and motioned to the people kneeling at the scene. "My beloved subjects, please rise." After Meng Zhengkai and the others stood up with complicated expressions, Emperor Qin, who had returned to the dragon throne, looked at Xiao Zhongyan with a gloomy face. Looking at the pale-faced scholars, he asked in a frosty voice, "Xiao Zhongyuan, do you know your crime?" Emperor Qin's question woke up Xiao Zhongyuan, who had completely fallen into panic. Then, he suddenly turned around and asked with a ferocious expression, "How dare you, Yu Haoran? Do you know who Xiao Jiufa is? Isn't he your father, the greatest reliance in your life?" Yu Haoran shrugged and said with disdain and mockery in his eyes, "Yu Haoran, Xiao Jiufa is not only my father, but also the patron saint of the great Emperor Qin kingdom. He is the strongest means to deter those who covet the great Emperor Qin kingdom's foundation for thousands of years." Ignoring Yu Haoran's mockery, Xiao Jiufa suddenly took a step forward and shouted, "Now, you use despicable means to kill my father and make the great Emperor Qin kingdom lose the patron saint who will protect the foundation for thousands of years. Yu Haoran, you deserve to die." "Huh?" Hearing that Xiao Zhongyan regarded Xiao Jiushuan as the patron saint of the great Emperor Qin kingdom, Yu Haoran laughed as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. "Yu Haoran, shut up." Yu Haoran's laughter made Xiao Zhongyuan feel as if he had been greatly humiliated. He could not help but shout angrily, "Puff!" Chapter 1244. Xianyang City, inside the ceremonial hall. Haha. Yu Haoran did not stop laughing because of Xiao Zhongyuan's angry rebuke and vomiting blood. Xiao Zhongyuan pushed away the two scholars who were supporting him with a livid face and was about to go forward and rebuke him again. Only then did he stop laughing. Then, he sneered with disdain. "Xiao Zhongyuan, a trash who can't even resist one of my moves, is called the guardian of Emperor Qin's kingdom by you. I'm afraid this is the funniest joke I, Yu Haoran, have ever heard in my life." In fact, the mockery just now was not false. Xiao Jiufa was indeed killed by his devouring technique. "Yu Haoran, shut up immediately." Hearing Yu Haoran's mockery of his father, Xiao Zhongyuan roared and took a deep breath. After he regained his composure, he spoke with an arrogant tone. "My father has been famous for more than 70 years. Countless famous experts have been defeated by him." Glancing at Yu Haoran contemptuously, Xiao Zhongyuan also sneered with disdain. "You, a brat who is still wet behind the ears, can defeat and kill my father with only one move. I'm afraid this is the funniest joke I've ever heard in my life." Xiao Zhongyuan, there's a wise saying in your Confucian sacred scripture: ambition is not determined by age. Without ambition, you can only live 100 years. In fact, after successfully devouring Xiao Jiufa, Xiao Zhongyuan, who had lost his greatest reliance, was no longer a threat. He did not need to continue to entangle with him. However, he knew that Emperor Qin wanted to use this opportunity to launch a second burning of books and burying of Confucianism, to completely eliminate the greatest hidden danger of the Emperor Qin's kingdom, Confucianism. Therefore, in order to find a reason for Emperor Qin to convince the world, he could only fight back patiently. Since I, Yu Haoran, set foot on the martial path from the beginning of the martial disciple realm, then to the martial warrior, martial master, martial ancestor, martial king, and now to the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm, which is only one step away from the martial venerable realm, it only took a little more than 2 years. At this point, Yu Haoran suddenly took a step forward and continued to fight back with an arrogant expression. "Ever since I stepped into the bloody world of martial arts, every opponent that I, Yu Haoran, have faced is an expert that is several realms higher than me. When I, Yu Haoran, was in a martial realm, I could defeat experts in the martial emperor realm with the secret method of transforming strange beasts. When I was in the martial ancestor realm, I could kill experts who had comprehended the power of law's power. When I, Yu Haoran, was in the martial emperor realm. I could kill experts in the martial venerable realm with the secret method of Law's martial skills. Now I, Yu Haoran, am in the peak of the 9th grade martial saint realm. It is not difficult to defeat and kill a trash in the early 3rd grade martial venerable realm. Facing Yu Haoran's counterattack, Xiao Zhongyuan spat out 3 mouthfuls of blood as if he had been seriously injured, and directly took a few steps back. If it were not for a few great scholars reaching out to support him in time, he would have fallen directly to the ground. Looking up at Yu Haoran, who was emitting a strong aura, Xiao Zhongyuan's heart was filled with endless regret at this moment. He knew that his plan to use the laws of the Emperor Qin's kingdom to get rid of Yu Haoran through conviction and revitalize Confucianism had completely failed. Moreover, he had implicated his father and caused him to lose his life. Yu Haoran, even if you could defeat my father in one move, why didn't you spare his life and protect the Emperor Qin's kingdom together, and help His Majesty build an everlasting foundation? Now that he had lost his father's protection, with Emperor Qin's character, he would never let him go. Xiao Zhongyuan knew that he would definitely die. However, he was unwilling to die like this. He wanted to use his last means of expressing his loyalty to plant a seed of suspicion between Yu Haoran and Emperor Qin. He hoped that in the future, this seed of suspicion would cause the two to completely turn against each other. Faced with Xiao Zhongyuan's sinister intentions before his death, Yu Haoran immediately sneered disdainfully and said with a deep look of disgust on his face, "Xiao Zhongyuan, even if I, Yu Haoran, die, I will never cooperate with a heartless and inhumane animal. Shut up." After hearing Yu Haoran's insult to his father, Xiao Zhongyuan, who was burning with anger, quickly walked up to him and begged with a red face, "Yu Haoran, my father has already been killed by you. His Majesty will definitely not let me, Xiao Zhongyuan, and the Xiao clan off. Could it be that you can't be more open-minded, accumulate some virtue in your words, and respect the dead?" After glancing coldly at Xiao Zhongyuan, Yu Haoran took out a sparkling and translucent crystal from his storage ring. Then, he directly threw it to a grand scholar at the peak of the 7th grade martial king realm and instructed, "This is a very rare memory crystal. Just inject some yuanli into it, and it will reproduce the images recorded in the water sun." The grand scholar, holding the memory crystal, raised his head and looked at Xiao Zhongyuan with a hint of questioning in his eyes. After receiving Xiao Zhongyuan's nod of agreement, the grand scholar injected yuanli into the memory crystal. Soon, the memory crystal began to reproduce the blood sacrifice that took place in Yanluo City. When he saw the black-clothed middle-aged man standing on the red altar of the Black Tower, madly raising his cultivation and strength through the blood sacrifice of millions of lives in Yama City, anger, regret, confusion, shame, and other complex emotions began to fiercely attack Xiao Zhongyuan's consciousness. In the end, knowing that he was going to die, Xiao Zhongyuan, who was too ashamed to face the world, chose to give up and let the complicated emotions destroy his little remaining vitality. Sigh. Yu Haoran could not help but sigh as he looked at Xiao Zhongyuan, who died with his eyes wide open. Using the suction force formed by his elemental energy, he retreated to Meng Zhengkai's side after retrieving the memory crystal from the great Confucian scholar's hand. He then left the rest of the matter to the Qin Emperor. "Your Majesty, I know I was wrong." Just after Yu Haoran took back the memory crystal, a grand scholar, surnamed Wu, who gradually woke up from the shock, immediately knelt on the ground and kowtowed while crying bitterly. This humble subject must have been instigated by that demon, Xiao Zhongyuan, to finally commit such a heinous crime. "I implore your Majesty to spare this humble subject's life on account of this humble subject's decades of service." "Your Majesty, Xiao Jiufa was able to sacrifice millions of lives in Yanluo City in exchange for a powerful cultivation and strength. He must be a demon who transformed into a human." Then, as Xiao Jiufa's biological son, Xiao Zhongyuan must also be a demon. "I must have been controlled by a demon and finally did such a crazy thing to sue your Majesty." The pleading of the Grand Scholar, surnamed Wu, immediately gave the other Grand Scholars an excuse to defend themselves. The Grand Scholar, surnamed Liu, who had once reprimanded Yu Haoran, also knelt on the ground and began to shirk responsibility. Chapter 1245. Xianyang City, Ceremonial Hall. Prince Consort, do you see that? These are the great scholars who have enjoyed an eternal reputation and taught the world how to behave. Looking at the great scholars who desperately slandered Xiao Zhongyuan and his son and tried their best to shirk their responsibilities in order to protect their own lives, Meng Jinkai's tone was full of disdain and sarcasm. In fact, they are a group of sinister villains who speak of benevolence, righteousness, and morality. This is also why His Majesty wants to use the bloody method of burning books and burying scholars to weaken their influence on the empire. Nodding his head, Yu Haoran did not say anything more. This was because the reason why he had patiently retorted Xiao Zhongyuan's various doubts was to give Emperor Qin a reasonable excuse to eliminate the parasites in the Confucian way. In fact, Confucianism was indeed the holy way of governing a country. It was just that many great scholars who were blinded by greed had read it astray and gone astray. Prince Consort, fortunately, Xiao Zhongyuan died in a fit of anger. Hearing the conversation between Meng Jinkai and Yu Haoran, Prince Yifeng hurriedly came over and sighed. Otherwise, after seeing the faces of my colleagues and friends, I'm afraid I'll be so angry that I'll vomit blood and die. No. Facing Prince Yifeng's sigh, Yu Haoran shook his head and said, in fact, Xiao Zhongyuan was a very smart person. He had long seen through the hearts and faces of these people. He would not be angry because of their slander and betrayal. After hearing Yu Haoran's evaluation of Xiao Zhongyuan, Prince Yifeng and Meng Jinkai could not help but feel surprised. Turning his head to look at the Yin family ancestor, Yu Haoran chuckled and did not say anything more. Yu Haoran's inexplicable attention to the Yin family ancestor's actions made the astute Prince Yifeng realize something. He raised his head and looked at Xiao Zhongyuan, who was standing in the main hall with his eyes wide open, with a trace of admiration in his eyes. Looking at these old men who had been officials for dozens of years, most of them had white hair. In order to live a few more days, they gave up the strength of character that the Confucian way had always maintained and trampled on the last bit of human conscience. The coldness in Emperor Qin's eyes became sharper, and the disgust in his heart became stronger. Steward Jiang, Emperor Qin ordered in a hoarse voice. This old servant is here. Steward Jiang kneeled on the ground with a trace of excitement. Order people to hang Xiao Zhongyuan's corpse on the city wall. Let be blown by the wind, drenched by the rain, struck by lightning, and spittle, never to be buried. This old servant obeys. After receiving the order, Steward Jiang did not immediately get up. He knew that the emperor still had an imperial edict to issue. In addition, write the facts in the memory crystal in detail and also post them on the city wall. Let the world know what kind of person the famous Xiao Jufa was, and let all the scholars in the world know how sad and angry I am. This old servant obeys. After dealing with Xiao Zhongyuan's matter, Emperor Qin looked at the 137 great scholars kneeling on the ground and did not hide the strong, murderous intent in his eyes. Old Prime Minister, for the sake of our friendship as colleagues and schoolmates, please plead on behalf of us pitiful people who have lost our way. After seeing Emperor Qin's murderous eyes, a great scholar who had a good relationship with a Yin family ancestor immediately moved his knees and knelt in front of him, kowtowing desperately and begging. And this great scholar's action also gave the other great scholars hope to save their lives. They all pleaded with the people who had a good relationship with them. Old General Meng, Prince Yifeng, General Gu. In this regard, Emperor Qin did not order anyone to stop them. He just continued to watch these people's ugly behavior coldly. At the same time, he also wanted to see who would dare to plead for them in the face of universal condemnation. Fortunately, Emperor Qin was very satisfied with the result. Even Gu Chang, who had expressed dissatisfaction with Yu Haoran, chose to remain silent. Out of the 9 crimes you listed, every single one of them will put the prince consort on the path to death, and every single one of them will implicate the prince consort's 9 generations. Slowly standing up from the dragon throne, Emperor Qin said condescendingly, "Now, I will fulfill your wishes. Not only will I sentence you to death, but I will also implicate your 9 generations." After hearing the final punishment issued by Emperor Qin, some of the great scholars with poor psychological quality immediately fell to the ground in tears. Some of the vicious great scholars wanted to break out of the encirclement with the strength of the martial king and martial royal realm. However, when he saw Chief Steward Jiang, who had somehow left the main hall, leading 500 imperial guards who were martial emperors and martial sages in a hall, he finally chose to give up resisting in despair and allowed the imperial guards to take him out of the hall. On the 9th day of the 11th lunar month, he went on a long journey and married someone else. Yu Haoran, who had not slept all night, changed into a sky-blue robe early. There was a jade pendant with a cloud dragon on his waist and a gorgeous red flower on his chest. He stood in the front hall of the prince's mansion with a gloomy face. He looked helplessly at Yusiki, who was full of excitement as she commanded the palace maids and eunuchs back and forth. "Yu Haoran, I warn you, if you dare to take off the red flower on your chest, I will spank you in front of everyone." Seeing Yu Haoran secretly pinch the red flower ribbon with his left hand, intending to take off the red flower, Yusiki immediately turned around and threatened him furiously. In response, Yu Haoran was so gloomy that he wanted to call out his second clone and ask him to get married for him and embarrass himself. 9th junior brother. Just as Yu Haoran was so gloomy that he wanted to vomit blood, he suddenly heard eldest senior brother Chu Zhongyu's voice. He could not help but feel happy. "Elder sister, the senior brothers and junior brothers from Qingyun Peak are here. I will go and welcome them." Without giving Yusiki a chance to respond, Yu Haoran immediately rushed out of the front hall and took off the flower on his chest. "Eldest senior brother, second senior brother, junior brother Gongsun, junior sister Gongsun." Yu Haoran greeted Chu Zhongyu and the others with a smile, who were still in shock. However, when he saw that the person he had hoped to see did not come with Chu Zhongyu and the others, a trace of disappointment flashed across his eyes. 9th junior brother, I wish you and Princess Ling Fei 100 years of bliss and eternal love. As Yu Haoran became stronger and stronger, his status and influence increased, and the pressure he brought to Chu Zhongyu and the others also increased. When they saw Yu Haoran, who was full of smiles and took the initiative to welcome him, they could not say the words they had prepared along the way. In the end, they could only say a few words of congratulations. In response, Yu Haoran asked casually, "Eldest senior brother, is Master not back yet?" Nodding, Chu Zhongyu wanted to say something, but in the end, he could not say anything. Chapter 1246. Inside the prince's mansion, second senior brother, who had successfully obtained a chef saint's inheritance and had just broken through to the martial king realm, immediately assured him, 9th junior brother, if there's any dirty or tiring work, feel free to arrange it. As your senior brothers, we promise to do it beautifully." Nodding, Yu Haoran took out 8 sparkling and translucent memory crystals from his storage ring and handed them to second senior brother and the others. "Second senior brother, this is a memory crystal. It can record everything that's happening after you inject your Yuan Qi into it. I hope that you can record every aspect of today's wedding for me and Ling Fei to have beautiful memories." After reaching out to take the memory crystals, his senior brothers and Gong Sun Yiming patted their chests and promised, "No problem." Nodding, Yu Haoran turned his head and instructed Gong Sun Yuding, whose eyes were slightly red, "Little junior sister, after I marry your sister-in-law, go to the bridal chamber in the backyard and chat with her for a while so that she won't feel nervous if there aren't enough people around." Looking at the cloud dragon jade pendant on Yu Haoran's waist from the corner of her eye, Gong Sun Yuding nodded softly with a slight heartache. Yu Haoran waved at a busy eunuch and asked him to bring Chu Zhongyu and the others to rest first. He took a deep breath and strode to the front of the mansion, to the rainbow auspicious cloud plaza that had been temporarily refined using the clouds and the void. As the main character of the wedding, he was very busy, but he was also very free. He was free because all the procedures of the wedding had already been arranged by Chief Steward Jiang. There was no need for him to worry, nor was there a need for him to exert himself. He was very busy because as the groom, he had to stand at the door and welcome all the guests who came to congratulate him, regardless of whether they were well-intentioned or not. He also had to follow the royal etiquette to welcome Ling Fei, perform the ceremony, send her to the bridal chamber, and take care of all the other matters. Fortunately, Emperor Qin knew his casual and leisurely personality, so he cut down on many of the tedious steps. Otherwise, he might have given up on the wedding and eloped with Qin Ling Fei directly. This servant greets the prince consort. The 18 eunuchs in charge of welcoming the singing and receiving the gifts, as well as the 6 officials from the Ministry of Rites in charge of recording the guest list and gifts, quickly knelt down and saluted. "Get up," Yu Haoran gently instructed as he gestured for everyone to rise. "Thank you for your hard work today. After the wedding is over, you can go to Chief Steward Jiang to receive your elixirs and spirit stones. Thank you for your grace, Prince Consort." Nodding his head, Yu Haoran lifted his head and looked in the direction of Pingyang City. His eyes revealed a tinge of sadness. Under normal circumstances, the representative of the groom, standing at the door to greet the guests, was not only himself, but also his father and mother. However, due to the accident 3 years ago, not only were they unable to prepare for their own marriage, they were also unable to enjoy the tea offered by their daughter-in-law. It could be said that the loss of the parents was a regret that could never be made up for in a wedding. The sudden appearance of 5 figures in the cloudless sky made Yu Haoran hurriedly put away the sadness and regret in his heart. A joyful smile appeared on his face. Big Brother Feng, Big Sister Baiwa, Big Brother Huang, Big Sister Frost, Big Brother Bai. Looking at the 5 people who slowly landed on the rainbow auspicious cloud plaza, Yu Haoran hurriedly greeted them with a smile. "Huh." As the leader of the 5, Zhai Xing laughed heartily and congratulated them. "Brother Yu, congratulations. Brother Feng, I didn't expect you to be the first batch of distinguished guests to attend my wedding." Yu Haoran exclaimed happily. "Little Brother Haoran, actually Brother Zhai Xing had already brought us to stay in Xianyang City 5 days ago. His goal was to be the first." In response to Yu Haoran's exclamation, Baiwa immediately appeared in front of Yu Haoran in a flash. She began to expose Zhai Xing's shortcomings while sizing up Yu Haoran from head to toe. Then she sighed with a face full of regret. "What a pity. That girl, Princess Ling Fei, got lucky. It seems that Sister Frost and I have no chance." The arrival of his friends made Yu Haoran completely put down his sadness and regret. He joked happily, "Sister Baiwa, the challenge we made when we first met still counts. After the wedding, you and I can still find a place to fight 300 rounds." In response to Yu Haoran's teasing, Madame Baiwa stuck out her towering breasts and provoked him tenderly. "Bring it on. I'm not afraid of you." Baiwa. It was a joyous occasion, and the bride was the Empire's princess. Some jokes were not suitable for this kind of occasion. Therefore, after Zhai Xing scolded, he motioned for Yu Haoran to continue greeting the other guests. Then he led the 4 people from Baiwa to present their gifts. Black Tortoise Mountains, Zhai Xing Sanren wishes the Emperor's son-in-law and Her Highness the Princess a happy and eternal marriage. I gift you 1 high-grade Sage Realm artifact, 5-grade 4 spirit herbs, and 3 strands of heavenly silk jade. When Zhai Xing presented his gifts, a middle-aged eunuch took the list and immediately began to read it aloud. The eunuch who read out the gifts was from the Bureau of Ceremonies of the Imperial Household. He had cultivated a martial technique called the Lion's Roar art his entire life, and he was the eunuch who read out the gifts for the weddings of members of the imperial family. When Zhai Xing heard the eunuch's voice spread throughout Xianyang City, he immediately felt his face heat up. He had never participated in a wedding before, so he had no idea that the gift was to be read out in public. If he had known, he would have taken out even more precious gifts. There would have been no need to embarrass himself in front of the millions of people in Xianyang City. 100 Flower Valley's Madame Baihua wishes the Emperor's son-in-law and Her Highness the Princess to be destined for 3 lifetimes, the beginning of a family. I gift you 2 low-grade Sage Realm artifacts, 6 grade 5 spirit herbs, 1 grade 4 spirit herb, and a box of 100 flower spirit fat. After hearing the eunuch read out the gifts, Baihua secretly let out a sigh of relief. Zhaixing glared at Baihua with dissatisfaction, and then used his gaze to warn the remaining 3 people not to continue to embarrass him. Unfortunately, whether it was Wu San, Bing Shuang, or Bai Yuan, their gifts all far surpassed Zhaixing's. This made him so gloomy that he almost vomited blood. After receiving the gifts from Zhaixing and the others, the eunuch in charge of receiving them led them into the mansion. Then, according to their reputation and the preciousness of their gifts, they were finally arranged to be in the ordinary guest area. The arrival of Zhaixing and the others seemed to foreshadow the start of the wedding. Just as they entered the mansion, 2 people, one green and one white, one old and one young, quickly landed on the 7-colored auspicious cloud. Seeing that the Emperor's son-in-law did not take the initiative to greet them, a very shrewd eunuch immediately ran over. He took the name card, gift list, and storage bag from the white-haired old man and passed them to the middle-aged eunuch. Dongxing City's Su clan's Su Changlong, together with my great-grandson Su Jian, wishes the Emperor's son-in-law and Her Highness the Princess a happy marriage. Chapter 1247. In front of the prince's mansion, the Su family was a family of inheritance that was as famous as the Guliang family. They were also one of the 3 top forces in the southern region. However, the Su family had always followed the principle of seclusion and cultivation. They never participated in any of the worldly affairs of the Tianxian continent. Therefore, the appearance of Su Changlong and Su Jian surprised Yu Haoran. It also surprised many people who were familiar with and understood the Su family. Although he did not expect the Su family to send people to attend his wedding, they were all guests. Therefore, Yu Haoran immediately greeted them with a smile. Junior Yu Haoran greets Senior Su and Senior Brother Su. Facing Yu Haoran's junior greeting, Su Changlong hurriedly declined in fear. "You're too polite, Prince Consort. How would I dare to address you respectfully as senior?" In response, Yu Haoran only chuckled and did not say anything. He then motioned for the eunuch to lead the Su family grandfather and grandson into the mansion. "Great-grandfather, although the Su family has followed the teachings of our ancestors and secluded ourselves from the world, everyone in the southern region knows the true strength and background of the Su family. Why do you have to curry favor with the Yu family?" As the Su family was one of the top 3 forces in the southern region, and Su Changlong himself was a peak 3rd Tribulation quasi-martial venerable, the number of congratulatory gifts he had given was sufficient. Therefore, he was led to the VIP area by the eunuch in charge. Looking around, Su Jian found that he and his great-grandfather were the only 2 people in the VIP area. Therefore, he asked without any scruples. "Silence." Hearing the contempt in his great-grandson's tone toward Yu Haoran, Su Changlong was shocked and hurriedly reminded his great-grandson. Then, he used his divine telekinesis to warn his great-grandfather. "Jian, Yu Haoran is not as simple as you think. According to ancestor Feng Wu's divination using the innate divination technique and the various signs of the heavenly ways rules, it is very likely that he is the legendary son of destiny." Sizzle. Yu Haoran might be the son of destiny. After hearing his grandfather's advice, Su Jian couldn't help but gasp. Seeing that more guests had arrived, Yu Haoran hurriedly dispelled the speculation that the Su family would be attending his wedding. He then carefully observed the guests' appearances. The guest who landed on the Rainbow Auspicious Clouds Plaza was a woman. She was a woman who clearly possessed a peerless beauty, but was completely disfigured by a sword scar on her face. She was a woman who looked to be in her 20s, but gave off a feeling of vicissitudes. Junior Yu Haoran greets Senior Yun Xiao. Facing the woman who was slowly walking over, Yu Haoran hurriedly went up and greeted her respectfully. "You know me?" Seeing Yu Haoran take the initiative to salute him, Yun Xiao asked in surprise. Senior Yun Xiao, one of the top 10 wandering cultivators in the profound sky continent, with the title of Azura Jade Hand, I'm afraid it would be difficult for this junior to not know of him. Yu Haoran explained with a smile. Azura Jade Hand Yun Xiao, the fourth strongest among the top 10 wandering cultivators. In his previous life, Yu Haoran was fortunate enough to meet Yun Xiao 3 times by chance. The first time they met was when he was being chased by his enemies and was accidentally saved by her. The second time they met was in a small, secluded tavern, where he saw her seal her cultivation and strength so that she could drink herself to death. The third time they met was when she was being plotted against by her close friends and family. When she was poisoned by a lethal poison, he took the risk to save her life. It was also because of the 3 special meetings that Yun Xiao had briefly introduced her life filled with misfortune. It was also because her misfortune was very similar to his that the two of them could be considered friends despite the difference in age. Thinking that Yu Haoran was not only a famous alchemy grandmaster in the profound sky continent, but also the prince consort of the Emperor Qin Kingdom, perhaps someone had specially introduced him to the appearances and backgrounds of the top 10 wandering cultivators in the profound sky continent. Therefore, in the face of Yu Haoran's explanation, Yun Xiao nodded and walked in front of the eunuch in charge. She took out a name card, a gift list, and a storage ring. Yungu Villa's Shun Yun Xiao wishes that the prince consort and her royal highness will be a good match in marriage. I will give you 1 purple fire thunder, a top-grade Saint Stage defensive magic weapon, a low-grade honorable stage offensive magic weapon, and a pair of Skynet rosy jade pendants. After hearing Shun Yunxiao's gift, Yu Haoran could not help but frown. The purple fire thunder was a one-time, self-destructing magic weapon. It had the power to destroy heaven and earth. It was the magic weapon of the weapon refining sect, one of the top 7 sects in the profound sky continent. 10 years ago, Yun Xiao had accidentally saved the life of the weapon refining sect's master. After that, the weapon refining sect's master gave her 3 purple fire thunder to repay her for saving his life. The Skynet rosy jade pendants were the best magic weapon for transmitting sound. As long as the 2 parties holding the jade pendants were not more than 1,000,000 miles away from each other, they could transmit sound to each other at any time. It was also the best magic weapon for protecting one's life. Just the purple fire thunder and the Skynet rosy jade pendants were worth far more than the pile of treasures given by the Su family. Moreover, there was also a top-grade Saint Stage defensive magic weapon and a low-grade honorable stage offensive magic weapon. He was already puzzled that Yun Xiao could attend his wedding. Now that he saw the importance of the gifts, he was even more puzzled. Xianyang City, EU Palace. Emperor Qin, who was wearing a brand-new dragon robe, looked at Qin Lingfei, who was wearing a phoenix coronet and a red robe. Her face was slightly blushing, and his eyes revealed a gratified and happy smile. Beside Emperor Qin, Zi Xian, who was wearing a brand-new purple dress, looked at Qin Lingfei enviously. Her eyes revealed a trace of longing. Lingfei, although you will be Yu Haoran's woman after the wedding, in my heart, you will always be my most beloved daughter. Emperor Qin walked to Qin Lingfei's side and reached out to help her tidy up the red beads on the phoenix coronet. His tone was full of affection as he comforted her. So, in the future, I will visit you when I am free. Father, Haoran has set up many formations in the prince's mansion. I'm not familiar with and proficient in these formations. So, if you want to see me, I will come back to visit you often. Qin Lingfei's eyes were full of cunning as she replied. Anyway, the prince's mansion is very close to the imperial palace. It will only take a few minutes to fly there. Faced with the response of his most beloved daughter, Emperor Qin suddenly felt depressed and did not know what to say. In fact, Going to the prince's mansion to visit Ling Fei was not his real intention. His real intention was to absorb the Xianhuang qi in the mansion, because yesterday he had deeply experienced the power and mystery of the Xianhuang qi. He also knew that the Xianhuang qi was still the key to whether he could finally reach the level of Emperor Wu. Seeing that Qin Ling Fei unceremoniously exposed the real intention of Emperor Qin was depressed and did not know how to refute. Zixian was infected by the warmth and could not help but smile. Star-picking cultivator of Xuanwu Mountain, I wish the emperor's son-in-law and the princess a happy marriage forever. Chapter 1248. Xianying City, Yue Palace. The guests have arrived. The wedding is about to begin. After hearing the eunuch's announcement, Zixian turned her head to look in the direction of the prince's mansion and said softly. Nodding his head, Emperor Qin also looked in the direction of the prince's mansion and said with anticipation in his eyes, "Next, let's see how many close friends the prince's son-in-law has made in the past year." After all, the number of guests and the noble status of the guests were also important in whether the wedding could be completed successfully. At the same time, it was also one of the main bases to decide the increase or decrease of the dowry of the married daughter. "Your Majesty, who are the 5 guests just now? Why have I never heard of them before?" After the eunuch's announcement stopped for more than 10 seconds, Zixian knew that the guests just now were a group of people. She frowned and thought for a while before asking with a slightly puzzled tone, "Empress Dowager, the 5 people just now are very famous loose cultivators in the southern mountain range. The 5 of them are sworn siblings of the opposite sex." Emperor Qin's tone was very relaxed as he explained with a smile. "Among them, the strongest old man, Zhai Xing, is already a first tribulation quasi-martial honorable. So it's just a group of ordinary loose cultivators." After hearing Emperor Qin's explanation, a trace of contempt flashed in Zixian's eyes. Dongxing City's Su family, Su Chonglong, together with his great-grandson, Su Jian, wishes the prince's son-in-law and the princess a happy marriage. Just as Zixian's contemptuous words fell, the eunuch's announcement of the second group of guests sounded. After hearing that the second group of guests who came to attend the wedding and sent many gifts were actually from the Su family, which had lived in seclusion for more than 100,000 years, the contempt in Zixian's eyes was immediately replaced by surprise. She could not help but turn her head to look at Emperor Qin. "Empress Dowager, the Su family is one of the few inherited families in the Tianxian continent that is proficient in the Xiantian fate divination technique." Through the palace walls, Emperor Qin seemed to be able to see the Su family grandfather and grandson standing on the rainbow clouds. His tone was very serious as he speculated. Now, they are actually willing to break the ancestral rule of living in seclusion for more than 100,000 years and personally send people to attend the wedding. It seems that the prince's son-in-law is hiding a secret that you and I don't know. "Your Majesty, your speculation is very reasonable. It seems that we have to add another 10% of the dowry for Ling Fei's eyes." Nodding, Zixian turned to look at Qin Ling Fei, whose face was filled with joy and reminded her with heartache. As the Qin Emperor's most beloved daughter and most valued son-in-law, the Qin Emperor had already prepared the richest dowry for Qin Ling Fei among all the princesses in history. House Twos, who was in charge of to manage the palaces, to be twos, to be to her, to be. But just as she finished her reminder, the middle-aged eunuch's voice sounded in her ears again. "Her! To give such a gift to... such a to give to..." Zixian's expression changed when she heard that the third guest was Shun Yunxiao, who was ranked 4th among the top 10 loose cultivators. Based on Shun Yunxiao's reclusive personality, she should have never had any contact with the prince's son-in-law. She's attending the wedding personally with such a valuable gift. I'm afraid she wants the prince's son-in-law to refine pills for her. Emperor Qin guessed with a smile. That should be the case. Nodding her head in agreement with Emperor Qin's speculation, Zixin reminded him with heartache. Your Majesty, it seems that we have to add another 5% of the dowry. In front of the prince's mansion, it seems that Yun Xiao is in trouble. I'm afraid she wants me to refine pills for her. Yu Haoran finally guessed the real reason for Yun Xiao's attendance at the wedding. It was exactly the same as Emperor Qin's speculation. Just as he figured everything out, another two people slowly descended onto the rainbow clouds. Yu Haoran had a vague sense of familiarity when he saw the azure-robed middle-aged expert and the azure-robed youth walking over. However, he was unable to recall who they were for the moment. Seeing that the prince's son-in-law didn't come forward to welcome them, the little eunuch in charge of running errands immediately went forward and took the name card, gift list, and a storage bag. Zheng Jinhua, vice leader of the Tianxin continent's first-rate sect, the Iron Blood sect, and my son, Zheng Zilong, wish the prince's son-in-law and her highness a blissful marriage. May you have a child soon. Gifting 30,000 5th-grade spirit stones, 10 6th-grade spirit herbs, and 3 5th-grade spirit herbs. Zheng Zilong lowered his head in shame when he heard the middle-aged eunuch's announcement. He didn't dare to look at Yu Haoran directly. Actually, when Zheng Jinhua took out his storage bag with a pained expression, Yu Haoran had already guessed his identity. Zheng Jinhua was Wu Zhengjuan's teacher in his previous life. They had met once before. Junior Yu Haoran greets Vice Leader Zheng and Junior Zheng. With a sincere smile on his face, Yu Haoran quickly went forward and greeted them respectfully. Although the Iron Blood sect was a famous first-rate sect in the Tianxin continent, they were also the poorest sect in terms of management and occupied the least territory. In his previous life, the reason why he could reunite with Wu Xingjun and become good friends with him was because he took the initiative to help Wu Xingjun earn a large amount of spirit stones when they first met. Prince's son-in-law, the Iron Blood sect, is too poor and the gift is too little. Please don't mind it. Although Zheng Jinhua had already gotten used to living a frugal life after a few decades of training and could face strange gazes calmly, the main reason they came to the wedding this time was to hope that Yu Haoran could help them refine a type of pill. Therefore, he was very worried that Yu Haoran would be displeased because the gift was too little and reject his request to refine the pill. As the saying goes, the thought behind sending goose feathers from 1,000 miles away is more important than the gift. Faced with Zheng Jinhua's slightly embarrassed apology, Yu Haoran smiled and comforted him. Sect Leader Zheng, Yu Haoran, am not a snobbish person and I don't lack any rare treasures, so I won't mind. As the Iron Blood sect, which was the worst in terms of management, even the sect leader, who was almost a martial honor, would personally come out to earn spirit stones during the most difficult times. Therefore, he knew that the spirit stones and spiritual herbs that Zheng Jinhua had just taken out were all he had. Other than being touched, how could he be displeased? That's good, that's good. Hearing the sincerity in Yu Haoran's comforting tone, Zheng Jinhua could not help but sigh in relief. After leading Zheng Jinhua and his son to the front of the mansion, Yu Haoran instructed the eunuch in charge, arrange for sect leader Zheng and Junior Zheng to go to the VIP area, because he knew that these eunuchs in charge were a bunch of snobs. If he had not specifically instructed them, Zheng Jinhua's gift would have been placed in the corner of the VIP area, which would have hurt the father and son's feelings. Yes, Prince's son-in-law. Chapter 1249. In front of the prince's mansion, after seeing the eunuch in charge lead Zheng Jinhua and his son into the mansion, Yu Haoran instructed the official from the Ministry of Rites who was in charge of arranging the gifts presented by the guests. Bring me the gifts from the vice head of the Metal Blood sect, Zheng Jinhua. Yes, Prince Consort. The official from the Ministry of Rites immediately handed the storage pouch to him respectfully. From his own storage ring, he took out 100,000 5th-grade spirit stones, ranging from 1st to 9th grade, and a 7th-grade low-grade spirit vein. After putting them all into Zheng Jinhua's storage bag, he instructed a young eunuch who was in charge of running errands. Return the storage pouch to the vice head of the Metal Blood sect and pass on my message to him. If they are unwilling to accept my, Yu Haoran's, small token of appreciation, then they do not need to continue staying in the mansion to attend the wedding. They can leave on their own. Yes, Prince. After respectfully receiving the storage pouch, the eunuch excitedly scuttled into the mansion. After all, absorbing the Xianhuang Qi in the mansion during this trip was enough to allow his cultivation of a third-grade martial great master to advance by a small stage. After seeing the eunuch excitedly scuttling into the mansion, Yu Haoran immediately turned around and looked at the person who was slowly descending on the rainbow cloud. Although he looked to be in his 40s, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes and the deathly stillness emanating from his body indicated that this person must have used some special method to remain in a deep slumber and had only recently awakened. At the same time, he also felt a trace of hostility from the other party's aura. Thus, he hurriedly pulled back the eunuch who was about to ask for his name card and gift list. Yu Haoran, don't worry too much. This person's cultivation is only at the peak of first-grade martial honor. Ever since he had kept the Black Pagoda's hell, Faling had used the Dragon Origin blood essence from the Beast Pet contract and the Divine Beast Kirin's blood essence to help him prepare for the wedding. He had been immersed in researching the 18 levels of hell in the Black Pagoda and had even ignored Yu Haoran's summons. Thus, after hearing Faling's reminder, Yu Haoran immediately asked in surprise, Faling, you're finally willing to help. Yu Haoran, this is the most important wedding of your life. As your elder, how can I not help you? Faling replied with a smile. Great. Without the help of his parents and his sister being a girl, he was busy all by himself. This made him look calm, but in fact there was always a trace of panic in his heart. He was afraid that something would go wrong in the middle and ruin the unforgettable wedding he had promised Qin Lingfei. Now, with the help of the tower spirit, who was both a master and a father figure, he finally had a pillar of support. Then, he looked up at the middle-aged man who was emitting hostility and said in a gentle tone, Senior, if you're here to attend this junior's wedding, then please introduce yourself first, and then enter the mansion to drink a cup of wine. Immediately after, his gentle tone was replaced by a stern one. If you're here to seek revenge, then please be straightforward. I, Yu Haoran, am willing to accompany you to the end. Yu Haoran, I wonder if you still remember Qin Baijun, the head of the Imperial clan court. When he saw that Yu Haoran had made his attitude clear, the middle-aged man, who had been trying his best to suppress his strength, immediately exploded with the power of a peak first-grade martial honor. The terrifying aura caused the rainbow clouds under his feet to crack. Xianying City, Yue Palace. Empress Dowager, what did you promise me? Due to the unexpected appearance of the loose cultivator, Shun Yunxiao, Emperor Qin and Zixian had been using their divine senses to monitor the movements in front of the prince's mansion so that they could help in time. Therefore, when the middle-aged man exploded with the power of a peak first-grade martial honor and mentioned the head of the imperial clan court, Qin Baijun, Emperor Qin, whose heart was instantly filled with boundless anger, questioned him with a gloomy face. Your Majesty, give me the sacred sword. Faced with Emperor Qin's questioning, Zixian's eyes were also filled with the same fury of being deceived. She stretched out her jade-like hand and ordered Emperor Qin, I will give your Majesty, Ling Fei, and the prince consort an explanation for this matter. Empress Dowager, there's no need for that. Emperor Qin's eyes were filled with shock as he shook his head. How is this possible? Zixian's eyes were also filled with disbelief. In front of the prince's mansion, when he saw the rainbow clouds that he had painstakingly created crack under the pressure of the other party's terrifying aura, Yu Haoran, whose heart was filled with boundless anger, immediately took out the white staff of the upper-grade martial honor realm. With the full cooperation of the staff's weapon spirit, he used the basic staff technique, Mount Tai Crush, to destroy the other party's soul. Just as Yu Haoran withdrew the white staff, he vaguely heard gasps coming from Xianying City and the void above his head. Looking up at the void, Yu Haoran's lips curled up slightly as he chuckled. Then, he withdrew his gaze and began to quickly form seals with his 10 fingers. Then, with the help of the Faling in his sea of consciousness, he quickly repaired the rainbow clouds that had cracks in the rainbow clouds. Just as Yu Haoran stopped forming hand seals, a group of 23 people quickly landed on the Rainbow Auspicious Clouds Plaza. Frowning slightly, a trace of displeasure flashed in Yu Haoran's eyes. Then, he took a deep breath and looked at the other party with a faint smile on his face again. Seeing that the prince consort didn't come forward to greet him, the little eunuch in charge of running errands immediately went forward. After receiving the name card, gift list, and storage bag from the other party, the little eunuch quickly returned to the mansion and handed the name card and gift list to the middle-aged eunuch. Luo Ying's sect's deputy sect Master Xiaobo, together with 22 successor disciples, wishes the prince consort and Her Royal Highness the Princess Consort be of one mind, gifting 1,000 7th-grade spirit stones, 100 6th-grade spirit stones, 3 7th-grade spirit herbs, 1 6th-grade spirit herb, and 1 high-grade zone realm magic tool. After reading out the gifts, the middle-aged eunuch raised his head and glanced at Xiaobo and the others, not hiding the ridicule and disgust in his eyes. In fact, not only the middle-aged eunuch, but the eunuchs in charge of running errands, as well as the officials of the Ministry of Rites who were in charge of recording and organizing the gifts, also did not hide the disgust in their eyes. Thank you, Deputy Sect Master Xiaobo, for coming to this prince consort's wedding. Although they were all guests, and Yu Haoran also greeted them with a smile, in terms of address and attitude, he was more formal and polite. If the people who came to attend the wedding were only Xiaobo and 1 or 2 successor disciples, even if he did not give a single gift, Yu Haoran would not care at all. However, not only did he bring 22 disciples in one go, most of them were only martial ancestors and martial kings. It was obvious that he was here to take advantage of the situation. How could he treat him with sincerity? Prince Consort is too polite. It's what I should do, what I should do. Xiaobo, whose skin was thicker than a city wall, said politely with a smile. Yu Haoran turned his head and nodded to the eunuch in charge, then gestured to Xiaobo. Deputy Sect Master Xiaobo, please. Prince Consort, you go first. Chapter 1250. Xianyang City, Yu Palace. Your Majesty, I have never seen such a shameless person. Seeing Xiaobo and the others being led into the mansion by the eunuch in charge, Zixian was so angry that she laughed and ridiculed. Luo Ying's sect, one of the 36 second-rate sects in the Tianxian continent, is located in the Lujiao mountain range of the central region, and its overall strength is almost the same as the 100 Qi Gate. Facing Zixian's ridicule, Emperor Qin was also in a bad mood and ridiculed her. Empress Dowager, the reason why Luo Ying's sect is able to maintain its status as a second-rate sect in the Lujiao mountain range is because of their shameless and shameless spirit. Emperor Qin, who had once absorbed the mysterious yellow qi in the prince's mansion, was very clear about how precious it was. Even with his close relationship with Yu Haoran, he was only able to stay for less than half a day. And Luo Ying's sect's vice-sect leader Xiaobo, with a mere 1,000 low-grade spirit stones as a gift, he was able to bring 22 disciples to stay in the mansion for nearly a day. How could this not make Emperor Qin feel unhappy and depressed? Seeing the Empress Dowager and father in a bad mood, Qin Lingfei could not help but secretly smile. In Emperor Qin's eyes, the mysterious yellow qi was very precious. But Yu Haoran had once explained the formation process of the mysterious yellow qi to him in detail. He knew that in the prince's mansion, the mysterious yellow qi was exactly the same as ordinary spirit qi. As long as the prince's mansion was not destroyed, the mysterious yellow qi would be inexhaustible. In front of the prince's mansion, looking at Xiaobo and the others being led into the mansion by the eunuch in charge, Yu Haoran could not help but shake his head. Shameless and shameless methods might be useful in the central region's Lujiao mountain range, but in the prince consort's mansion, where experts were about to gather, Xiaobo and the others would only become the targets of suppression and humiliation. Moreover, he believed that those chief eunuchs would definitely entertain Xiaobo and the others well. Yu Haoran sensed the weak fluctuations of his origin energy and soul power, so he quickly turned around to observe. When he saw an old man and a young woman, a man and a woman, landing on the rainbow auspicious cloud plaza, he immediately revealed an awkward smile. However, he still took the initiative to greet him. Disciple Yu Haoran greets the sect master. Yu Haoran greeted Kong Yung-ah after bowing to the nervous Lai Yin. Junior sister Jiang, you're here too. Sect master, let's go give a gift. Kong Yung-ah said to Lai Yin angrily after giving Yu Haoran a dissatisfied look. Looking back and forth between Yu Haoran and Kong Yung-ah, Lai Yin looked very helpless, not knowing who to listen to. Sect master, there's still a long way to go. And I have plenty of time and opportunities to talk. Yu Haoran hurriedly reminded her, afraid that he would anger Kong Yung-ah and make her cry on the spot. Kong Yung-ah quickly walked in front of the official from the Ministry of Rites who was in charge of registering the guests' origins and gifts. After taking out the name card, gift list, and gifts, she reminded the middle-aged eunuch who was in charge of reading them out. Read out the name card word for word. The middle-aged eunuch quickly scanned the contents of the name card and looked at Yu Haoran awkwardly. Yu Haoran smiled bitterly and nodded to the middle-aged eunuch, indicating that he should follow Kong Yung-ah's instructions. The sect master of the 100-Chi Gate, Lai Yin, together with the prince consort's junior sister and confidant Kong Yung-ah, wished the prince consort and the princess highness blooming together and forming a good marriage. We present a poem as a gift. The middle-aged eunuch took a piece of red paper from the official from the Ministry of Rites and glanced at the poem on the red paper. A strange expression immediately appeared on his face. He could not help but look up at Yu Haoran, who had a bitter smile on his face. Ignore him, read it. Seeing that the middle-aged eunuch was about to ask for Yu Haoran's opinion again, Kong Yung-ah appeared in front of him and ordered with a frosty expression. Yu Haoran nodded, indicating that he should listen to Kong Yung-ah's orders. If life is like the first time we meet, what is the sorrow of the autumn wind and the painting fan? How could it be better than the fickle brocade gown, the day when we were joined by wings and branches? Although he had tried his best to suppress his voice, many of the experts in Xianyang City who had been paying attention to the prince's mansion heard it clearly. Of course, hearing was just hearing. The guests did not care at all. After all, with Yu Haoran's current status and strength, even if he married the princess, it was normal for him to find 8 or 10 peerless beauties outside. The only thing that was more surprising was that the little girl called Kong Yung-ah would actually rebuke the heartless man at the wedding. Xianyang City, Eua Palace. Your Majesty, I have decided to break off the marriage. After hearing Kong Yung-ah's poem, Zi Xian, who seemed to have touched her sore spot, ordered with a frosty expression. Empress Dowager, no. To be able to become Yu Haoran's wife was Qin Lingfei's dream. Now that her dream was about to come true, how could she give it up because of the Empress Dowager's objection? Empress Dowager, please calm down. Let me explain to you in detail the relationship between the prince consort and the little girl Kong Yung-ah. Whether it was calling herself a confidant or rebuking Yu Haoran's heartless poem, Emperor Qin did not get angry at all. He motioned for Ling Fei to be quiet and then explained a relationship between the two with a smile. After carefully observing Kong Yung-ah with her spiritual sense, the frost on Zi Xian's face gradually melted. There was still a trace of doubt in her eyes. Your Majesty, are you sure that the prince consort and this little girl have no affair? Empress Dowager, I am 100% sure. Nodding his head heavily, the Qin Emperor gave his assent. However, a trace of worry appeared in his eyes, because he suddenly thought of the girls who appeared when Yu Haoran killed the 11 quasi-venerable realm beasts in the Hengduan Mountains alone. Whether it was appearance or temperament, they did not lose to Ling Fei at all. Those girls wouldn't be like Jiang Jingya, coming up with a play to refute the heartless man to his face, right? In front of the prince's mansion, glancing at Lai Yin and Kong Yung-ah, the eunuch in charge did not dare to lead them into the mansion. Instead, he walked to Yu Haoran and asked for his opinion. VIP area. Yu Haoran ordered without hesitation. After watching Kong Yong-ah and Lai Yin enter the mansion, Yu Haoran secretly breathed a sigh of relief. When he was about to use the means of spiritual sense to explain to Qin Lingfei, he immediately heard a happy laugh. Ha ha! Turning his head to look at the two men and one woman who landed on the colorful, auspicious cloud square, Yu Haoran immediately showed a happy smile on his face and greeted them. Elder Bien, Yun Xiang. After greeting them, Yu Haoran looked up at the middle-aged man standing beside Bien Shengwei, and a trace of understanding flashed in his eyes. Prince Consort, let me introduce you. Seeing that Yu Haoran's attention was on the middle-aged man, Bien Shengwei introduced with a smile. Chapter 1251. In front of the prince's mansion, Junior Yu Haoran greets President Wu. In fact, even without Bien Shengrui's introduction, Yu Haoran could guess Wu Siqing's identity. He also knew why he had come to attend his wedding. Although Wu Siqing's fate was miserable in the future, he still needed his full cooperation to achieve the best results at the auction after the wedding. Therefore, Yu Haoran did not dare to neglect his greetings. Prince Consort is too polite. Wu Boiji, who also did not dare to be arrogant, quickly returned the greeting. After Yu Haoran and Wu Boiji greeted each other, Yun Xiang immediately went forward to congratulate them. Yun Xiang wishes Master and Master's wife's love everlasting. Let's celebrate together. Yun Xiang, after attending the wedding, don't be in a hurry to leave. Master not only wants to check the results of your cultivation during this period of time, but also has a gift to give you to improve your cultivation and strength. Yu Haoran looked at Yun Xiang dotingly and exhorted her. Yes, Master. Yun Xiang nodded obediently. After that, Yu Haoran brought Bien Shui and Wu Boiji to the front of the mansion. President Wu Siqing of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, Great Elder Bien Xingrui, and Prince Consort's beloved disciple, Miss Yun Xiang, wish Prince Consort and Her Highness the Princess a happy marriage. 9 high-grade Saint Rel magic weapons, 9 top-grade Saint Rel magic weapons, 1 low-grade Exalt Rel magic weapon, 9 5th-grade spiritual herbs, 9 4th-grade spiritual herbs, 9 3rd-grade spiritual herbs, 9 8th-grade spiritual veins, 1 7th-grade spiritual vein, 9 drops of geocentric spiritual milk, 9 drops of geocentric spiritual liquid, 9 drops of geocentric spiritual milk, and 999 jugs of 100-flower fragrance wine. After hearing the gifts from the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, whether it was the guests who had entered the mansion early, Emperor Qin and Zi Xian of the EU Palace, or the guests who were ready to visit at any time, all of their faces changed slightly. An exalted realm magic weapon, spiritual vein, spiritual medicine, spiritual liquid, and spiritual milk were all treasures that were suitable for martial exalts. However, a peerless martial honorable might not be able to take out so many top-notch treasures. In the joyous Moon Palace Hall, Your Majesty, how much should we add to the dowry? Turning her head to look at Emperor Qin and thinking about the increasing dowry, Zi Xuan felt as if her heart was bleeding. 15%. After a little consideration, Emperor Qin also suggested with some heartache, Your Majesty, even if Yun Xiang is the Prince Consort's disciple, and even if Bien Xingrui is on good terms with the Prince Consort, there is no need for him to present so many precious gifts. Adding 15% to the original dowry was almost equivalent to 10 days of the Emperor Qin's tax revenue. While Zi Xian agreed reluctantly, she couldn't help but ask doubtfully. Shaking his head, Emperor Qin turned his head to look at Qin Lingfei, hoping that she could reveal some secrets. Although she knew that Yu Haoran didn't care about some worldly possessions, the more dowry her family gave, the more confidence she would have when facing possible competitors in the future. Therefore, in order to make her father and the Empress Dowager willing to add more dowry, Qin Lingfei decided to reveal a little secret. Father, Empress Dowager, before the hidden dragon battle in the southern region, the Prince Consort will hold a grand auction with the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce. What about the auction items? Emperor Qin asked with bright eyes. The prince consort didn't say much about the specific auction items, but according to his speculation, the final price of the auction items may be able to break the record of all previous auctions. Qin Lingfei answered truthfully. Supreme Huazu and Pill. Looking at each other, Zixuan and Emperor Qin said at the same time, 7 lives mysterious gate Pill. In front of the prince's mansion, in the face of the great gift from the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce, Yu Haoran's reaction was very calm, because he knew very well that the auction he held with them would definitely raise the reputation of the Heavenly World Chamber of Commerce to an unparalleled level. And the profit brought by this reputation was dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of times more than the great gift they gave. There was no need for special instructions. From the respectful attitude of the eunuch in charge, one could know that he would arrange Bian Xingrui and others well. After watching Bian Xingrui and others enter the mansion, Yu Haoran turned to look at the 3 people who slowly landed on the colorful, auspicious cloud square. There was a trace of surprise in his eyes, because he didn't expect that with the grudges between them, they would also come to attend his wedding. However, everyone who came was a guest. Moreover, one of the 3 people was his good friend, so Yu Haoran put away the surprise in his eyes and greeted with a smile on his face. Yu Haoran, a descendant of the Pill Dao, greets Valley Master and Great Elder. After Yu Haoran cupped his hands in greeting, he nodded to Meng Yujia, who had recovered more than half of her appearance and was showing her peerless beauty, and pretended that he didn't know her. Yu Zongshi, you've changed. Looking at Yu Haoran, who didn't look at him coldly because of their past grudges, the Great Elder of the Medicine King Valley sighed. The past is gone with the wind, and the world is clear now. After expressing his current state of mind with a smile, Yu Haoran waved his hand. Valley Master, Great Elder, Junior Sister, please. Nodding gently, Guzi and the Great Elder secretly sighed in relief and followed Yu Haoran to the front of the mansion. Valley Master of the Medicine King Valley, Great Elder, and your beloved disciple, Meng Yujia, congratulate Old Ma and Her Highness, the Princess. 100,000 4th tier 1st grade to 9th tier spirit stones, 10,000 3rd tier 1st grade to 9th tier spirit veins, 1 high grade 7th tier spirit vein, 36 5th tier spirit herbs, 18 4th tier spirit herbs, 9 3rd tier spirit veins, 3 2nd tier spirit herbs, 3 3rd tier elixir recipes, and 1 2nd tier elixir recipe. After hearing the congratulatory gifts from the Medicine King Valley, Yu Haoran's expression changed slightly, and he looked at Guzi and the Great Elder with a look of understanding. Then, he looked straight into Guzi and the Great Elder's eyes and promised solemnly, the grudges have been resolved, and the Pill Dao will be revived. Yu Haoran's promise made Guzi and the Great Elder smile, as if relieved of a heavy burden, and they followed the eunuch into the mansion. In the EU Palace, Your Majesty, how much do you think is appropriate? Zixian asked through gritted teeth. 15.5. Looking at his 2 good friends who entered the prince's mansion with relaxed expressions, Emperor Qin couldn't help but sigh after directly listing the amount of dowry. Empress Dowager, ever since the prince consort gave Ling Fei the mystical flame of the Xianyin soul fire, I knew that there was an irreconcilable conflict between the prince consort and the Medicine King Valley, and I have been thinking of ways to resolve the grudges between the 2 sides. Now that they are able to bury the hatchet, it is also a blessing for the great Emperor Qin kingdom. 15.5 dowry is not much. All right. After hearing Emperor Qin's explanation, the reluctance in Zixian's heart disappeared, and she couldn't help but worry as she nodded in agreement. Your Majesty, most of the guests now are only the top forces in the Southern Mountain Range, and we have already given out such a generous dowry. If there are more distinguished guests with more powerful backgrounds, I'm afraid we will have to use the collection in the treasury. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.